Chapter 609. Arrival of Two Saint Rulers. 2. Meditating on his bed. Jianchen tried hard to think of the best way to get rid of this imprint of death. If he couldn't, then he would be unable to leave Mercenary City. The imprint of death is formed from the three vital energies that can be found within a person. Its importance is the fact that it will leave behind an unerasable mark on the body that can easily be tracked. Hu Xiaotian's words came to mind, causing Jianchen to feel even more grim. He knew that Hu Xiaotian knew far more about this than he did. If he said that there was no way to erase this imprint, then it was perhaps impossible to really erase the mark the third elder left on him. If that was true, then Jianchen had to become strong enough to not fear even a saint ruler. If he couldn't, then if the saint ruler from the Shi family came to dispose of him, he would be helpless to do anything but stay within Mercenary City. Even if he used a space gate to travel countless of kilometers away, the imprint of death on him would make him unable to hide. No matter where he would run, the saint ruler would give chase. Jianchen's mind raced to find a solution to his problems. Ming Dong's uncle and grand elder of Mercenary City, Tianjian, came to mind, as well as the saint rulers from the Qinhuang kingdom. Right now, only those two factions would be able to help him fight off the Shi family. But Tianjian was a person that was unwilling to interfere in most matters. The last time he had helped out with the Huang family was because of Ming Dong. Tianjian was an extremely respectful figure within Mercenary City, so unless he personally called out to Jianchen, there would be no way to meet him again for help. So he had been ruled out. As for the Qinhuang kingdom, there were 4 other imperial protectors, each one of them saint rulers. With their strength, even the Shi family would be afraid. But the Shi family was not his only enemy. There was still the Jetta clan with their own saint ruler. If the two of them were to unite against the Qinhuang kingdom, then even the Qinhuang kingdom would feel slightly pressured. When Jianchen thought about how 2 of the saint rulers had met the saint ruler of the sect of Dragon and Tiger, and then came back out with gloomy expression, this had caused some concern for him, as he didn't know just what had happened between the two in the first place. Whether it was some sort of invisible pressure or something else of importance, Jianchen knew that whatever the case, it was just one disaster on top of another. Thus, having the Qinhuang kingdom help him with the Shi family and the Jetta clan was not a desirable option. Grim, Jianchen spent almost half the day trying to think of a solution on the bed. Right now he had really no idea just how he would manage both the Shi family and the Jetta clan. But even though he could also ask the patriarch of the Huang family, it would without a doubt add to the troubles of their family. They had more than enough to deal with at the moment with their current feud. Am I really going to have to stay within Mercenary City and cultivate until I break through to become a saint ruler? Jianchen thought as he massaged his temples in frustration. The promise he had made with little Fatty was reaching a year by now with not much time left. If he were to delay any longer, then he would really go over the year-long promise he made with him. Ziying, Qingsua, would you two perhaps know of a way to erase this imprint of death? With no other options, Jianchen could only hope that the 2 sword spirits would be able to help. Although Hu Xiaotian said there was no way, Jianchen was unwilling to give up. This time, Ziying and Qingsua had not replied to him. After waiting for a very long time, Jianchen could finally hear Qingsua's soft voice. Master, Ziying and Qingsua has the power to erase it, but our current power is far too weak for it to be optimal. The imprint on your body was made from the 3 energies of a person, and not just pure energy. That means it won't be as easy, and will take some time to do so. But Jianchen had been happy to hear it. How long will it take? With our current strength, I'm afraid it would take 3 months. Ziying spoke before continuing. There is a second option. If Master brings the chaotic force to a considerable degree straight away, then it will swallow up the imprint. That is because the chaotic body is something that will not allow any foreign thing to invade it. We'll go with the first option then, but I'll bring up the chaotic body another time. Upon mention of the chaotic body, Jianchen felt a headache. The chaotic body was indeed strong, but it was also extremely hard to get. The amount of chaotic force he needed for it was immense as well. A single ruler armament was equivalent to a sliver of chaotic force, and if he wanted to refine that into the chaotic body, then Jianchen would be at a loss on just how many ruler armaments he needed for that. If he had to absorb the energy of the world, then it would perhaps be tens of years for him to gain that equivalent sliver of a chaotic force. Afterwards, Jianchen had made the discussions with Ziying and Qingxua to begin and start the 3-month process to get rid of the imprint of death. He had been oblivious to the fact that his feat of killing 4 Heaven Saint Masters by himself was already spreading all around the land with frightening speed. Many people and factions were hearing of Jianchen's achievements, and so his name was growing farther and farther on the continent. At this current moment within a mountain range, there stood a giant building made of wood. At the center of one of the rooms, a giant beast could be seen sitting peacefully on the ground. Also in the room were several men of considerable age seated at the side. "Everyone, I've just received some unfortunate news. The 3rd elder and the ones with him have all died." One of the elders with long hair spoke sorrowfully. Upon hearing that news, everyone else had been startled. "What? The 3rd elder is dead? My lord, how could that have happened? The 3rd elders and the others were all completely killed?" One of the elders asked in agitation. There was clearly some relationship between he and the 3rd elder. The man seated at the very front of everyone else sighed with sorrow. With a low voice he spoke. "I am sure everyone remembers the one that stole our ruler armament, the seal of Treasure Mountain. Of course, that man is the first ranker of the gathering of the mercenaries Jianchen, but he was killed by the combined efforts of the 3rd elder and the ones from the Jetta clan. Even now, he has hidden the seal of Treasure Mountain from us. We haven't found hint nor hair of it ever since. We even used countless of methods to try and forcibly recall it, but everything ended in failure." One elder spoke with clenched teeth from his hatred for Jianchen. "My lord, why do you mention Jianchen now? Could the 3rd elder's death bear relation with him?" Another middle-aged man spoke. "Correct. It has to do with Jianchen." The lord of the Shi family spoke with a now serious expression. "Yesterday, I managed to receive a report from the 3rd elder, using our closed line of communication. The Jianchen who stole the seal of Treasure Mountain is still alive. Furthermore, he showed up in Mercenary City once more. We had 4 elders go with the 3rd elder to help him capture and reclaim the seal of Treasure Mountain. But what I just received just now was very startling to hear. The 3rd elder and the other 4 have all been completely killed. It was with great costs that the 3rd elder used his life to place the seal of death onto Jianchen." After the man had finished speaking, everyone had gone deathly quiet. Each of them were far more than tongue-tied. They simply couldn't believe their ears. It was truly hard to believe that the 3rd elder and the other 4 were all killed by Jianchen's hand. They had heard of Jianchen's strength before, but seeing how his strength was now at his age, it was beyond their scope of prediction really. His future potential was just that dazzling. That Jianchen is far too talented. That talent of his allowed him to kill 5 Heaven Saint Masters. It's only a matter of time before he becomes a saint ruler then. My lord, our blood debt with Jianchen is irreconcilable. We must not let this person live." An elderly voice spoke out, breaking the silence of the hall. The one who had spoken was an elderly old man with wrinkled skin. "Yes." The leader of the Shi family nodded. "That's right. Jianchen cannot be allowed to live. Otherwise, when the day comes for when he becomes a saint ruler, he will come seeking our family for trouble. We must take advantage of the fact that he is still within our scope and exterminate him with the speed of lightning itself. Notify the Jetta clan of this information. Have them bring some men so that they could stop anyone that Jianchen might invite. We must lessen the damage on our side as much as possible." 2nd elder, 5th elder, 6th elder, Elder Shiqing, Elder Shiming, Elder Tianhe, and Elder Gumu, prepare yourselves. Notify us when the men of the Jetta clan are here, and we will go off to capture Jianchen." "Yes, my lord." The aforementioned people responded. "We will adjourn our meeting here today. Everyone may leave," the leader announced, allowing everyone else to leave the halls. Just as they were about to exit the halls, a monumental amount of energy suddenly manifested within the area. Almost as if some sort of malevolent beast of antiquity had finally awakened from its slumber. The entire world had been basked within the power it brought with it, squashing the air of the Heaven Saint Masters back in their throats. That's the aura of the Patriarch. The Patriarch has broken through. The Patriarch has broken through to the next layer. Fantastic. At our time of need, the Patriarch has overcome it. The elders of the Sure family had been stunned by this change in events, but then this confusion had quickly gave way to joy. Chapter 610. Arrival of Two Saint Rulers 3. The area to the back of the Sure family compound was a forbidden place for many people to enter. Only the Lord of the Sure family and the elders could convene and gather there. One by one, they looked off to a hole in the mountain with a reverent gaze. Following the sounds of stone being moved aside, the heavy stone gates to the mountain slowly started to rise up, revealing a pitch-dark hole. From within, a middle-aged man dressed in white slowly made his figure known to everyone. Upon seeing this middle-aged man, everyone the Lord of the Sure family included genuflected to him and spoke out in respect. Congratulations to the Patriarch for breaking through and congratulations on becoming stronger. Ha 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 ha. I've been behind closed doors for 20 years now, but I have finally reached one step further in the comprehension of the mysteries of the world. I've reached the 5th heavenly layer. I've made yet another step to becoming a Saint King. The man laughed cheerfully. The Patriarch is talented beyond all else. Becoming a Saint King is only just around the corner then. Our Sure family is only great because of the Patriarch. One elder smiled as he flattered the Patriarch. In return, the Patriarch smiled. Wait for when I reach the 9th heavenly layer of the Saint Ruler realm and attempt to fuse with the seal of Treasure Mountain. If I manage to do so, then my chances of becoming a Saint King will become exponentially higher. But then his expression went askew as he looked towards the group with suspicion. Where is the seal of Treasure Mountain? Why can I not sense its existence? His words had caused the high-ranking elders of the family to grow nervous. Delaying to say anything for some time, the head of the Sure family spoke. Patriarch, because of our inabilities, the seal of Treasure Mountain was lost to us. What? The seal of Treasure Mountain was stolen? The Patriarch's face blanched. The joy that he had been feeling from making the breakthrough had instantly slipped off of his face. Afterwards, the Lord of the Sure family began to recount the entire tale of what happened to the Patriarch, without leaving a single word out. After all was told to him, the anger on the Patriarch's face slowly drained away. It would appear my initial command for you to steal the Solunar Bow from the Huang family was a mistake. I had not thought that the barrier I placed on my great-grandson would fail him and lead to his death. The seal of Treasure Mountain was taken as a result as well. The Patriarch hummed softly. Patriarch, the third elder left an imprint of death on Jianshen's body before he died. No matter where he may run, Jianshen cannot escape from us. We will reclaim the ruler armament with most haste. The Lord spoke nervously. Slowly closing his eyes, the Patriarch thought for a moment. His mouth opened soon afterwards. I've already sensed his location. But what is strange is that I cannot sense the existence of the seal of Treasure Mountain. It is almost as if my connection with it has been broken. Has this Jianshen perhaps found a way to hide it from even my own perception? Not only can I not sense it, I cannot even recall the seal of Treasure Mountain, even if I exhausted a tremendous price for it. The Patriarch hummed. There has been no conflict between us and the Jetta clan. They themselves are quite strong as well. Since we've already made enemies with the Huang family, it wouldn't do to make even more enemies. Go and notify the Jetta clan of this. Yes, Patriarch. The Lord bowed reverently. You may all leave. I will go find Jianshen. The seal of Treasure Mountain must be returned as soon as possible to avoid any other unforeseen circumstances. With that said, the Patriarch's figure instantly dissolved into a bolt of lightning that shot straight into the sky with speed, just as fast as lightning. Since he couldn't sense the seal of Treasure Mountain, it had filled the Patriarch with some dread. He had feared that it would mean the eternal loss of the ruler armament. Without it, then when the time came for him to try and break through to become a Saint King, the chances of a successful breakthrough would become all the harder. After the Patriarch had left, the Lord of the Sure family had sent men over to the Jetta clan to spread the news and tell them of the whereabouts of the Duanyan sword. The Jetta clan had actually received information, at the very same time of the Sher family, of what happened in Mercenary City. They had learned that the one who stole the Duanyan sword, Jianchen, was still alive. Furthermore, they learned that it was he that killed 5 elders from the Sher family. When they heard the news, they had immediately sent out a group of people to run for Mercenary City, as fast as possible. Even their saint ruler had set out when he heard the news to ensure that the operation would succeed without failure. In the eyes of the Jetta clan, Jianchen killing 5 Heaven Saint Master was far too important to disregard. In the blink of an eye, 2 days had passed since Jianchen killed the 5 Heaven Saint Masters. In those 2 days, Jianchen spent all of his time within his room with the sword spirits, trying to purify the imprint of death on his body. It had not been that easy, and even after 2 days, the sword spirits had only managed to get rid of a small speck of it. With this pace, it would take the entirety of the 3 months, as they had initially projected to fully eliminate the imprint of death. 2 days after that, Jianchen was only just opening his eyes when a wriggling sensation could be felt. Looking down, he could see the recently awakened tiger cub sprawled over Jianchen's legs in boredom. As if sensing Jianchen awakening, the tiger cub looked up to him with a pitiful glance. Opening its kitten-like maw open, the cub began to purr with a barely audible sound as it scratched one of its paws at the space ring Jianchen wore on his finger. Petting the head of the cub with a soft caress of his fingers, Jianchen spoke. "You are beginning to want even more and more heavenly resources. You've eaten quite a lot of the 1,000-year-old resources already, and you're still a Class 4 magical beast. It seems that it'll require plenty more heavenly resources before you can become a Class 5. That's more than I have." Despite that, Jianchen was not too stingy with his heavenly resources, and handed the tiger cub another 5 or 6 heavenly resources to eat. The cub had let out an excited purr before immediately wolfing down the items given to it. In a short few seconds, it had already eaten them all. With all 6 heavenly resources eaten, the cub laxed itself onto the bed and content, and closed its eyes in order to fall back asleep. Seeing the cub act this way, Jianchen shook his head helplessly, but he had allowed the cub to sleep while he walked out from the room. Since he was in Mercenary City, Jianchen wasn't worried about anyone harming the tiger cub. The cub hadn't attracted any outside attention so far, and the only ones that knew of it were Ming Dong and the others. Arriving at the dining halls below, Jianchen sat down by the table and spoke. "Waiter, a platter of roast meat and your finest wine." The waiter had given only one look at Jianchen before his eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh my! You're Lord Jianchen, the king of mercenaries. Please wait one moment, Lord Jianchen. This server of yours will go notify the chefs to prepare your food with all haste." With that said, the waiter flew off towards the kitchens, as if the floor beneath his feet was slick with oil. There had been a numerous amount of people in the area, so when the waiter had cried out, plenty of people turned to look over at the source. When their eyes landed upon Jianchen, they too had let out a gasp in both shock and admiration. At that moment, a middle-aged man and elderly figure came walking over from their own tables. Without even giving a greeting, the two of them sat down with hard looks at him. This middle-aged man looked to be around 40 years old, and wore simple clothing, a cheap azure robe, and his hair was tossed freely behind him without anything to dress it. It had given him a sense of being a messy person, and there was not a sense of aura coming from him. From what it looked like, he looked to be just the average commoner. As for the other elder, he wore white robes and had hair that was tied together. His 70-year-old face was peaceful-looking and seemed to carry around a sagely presence to him. Yet he too did not have any aura to him, but his face had spoke volumes of the man, marking him to be an extremely capable person. Jianchen had looked at the two without a single sound, but in his mind he had grown serious. He had no way of ascertaining their strengths. Even his presence had came up with nothing definitive. His presence was something that could even detect a Heaven Saint Master if they tried to conceal themselves from him. The only thing he knew that could overcome his presence was an expert at the Saint Ruler realm. "Are you Jianchen?" The middle-aged man spoke calmly. Not a hint of emotion could be heard from him. "Correct. I am he. Who might you two be?" Jianchen replied just as calmly. Although two saint rulers were seated in front of him, they were no different than to any other person in Mercenary City. "We've waited for you for one whole day. At last you finally come out. This must be the very first time a mere Heaven Saint Master has received such a treatment in history." The middle-aged man spoke. This time, his voice had carried a cold edge to it. "Jianshen, I am from the Shi family, and he is from the Jetta clan. We are both saint rulers, and came today to have you return our items back to us. You must know that much." The saint ruler from the Shi family spoke. He must have realized that Jianshen knew the two of them were saint rulers, and had thus mentioned it so readily. But to his disappointment, Jianshen had not reacted at all to this, and remained as calm as was before, as if this piece of information had no effect on him at all. "So you are the predecessors of the Shi family and the Jetta clan. Greetings." Jianshen smiled with his hands cupped together. Even up against two saint rulers with less than agreeable feelings for him, he had remained calm. "Jianshen, you know why we are here. So are you willing to return what is rightfully ours? From here, we will write off our debts if you do, and won't seek trouble with you in the future." The saint ruler from the Jetta clan spoke calmly. Giving an apologetic smile, Jianshen spoke. "My apologies. But the items you wish are no longer within my possession." The two saint rulers grew rigid straight away as the saint ruler from the Shi family spoke. "Then where are they now?" Chapter 611. Death of the Saint Ruler of the Shi family 1. "Gone, they don't exist anymore." Jianshen spoke honestly. As long as he was in Mercenary City, he didn't fear any saint ruler. "What? Gone? They don't exist anymore?" The saint ruler from the Jetta clan had found it hard to remain his calm, and had looked confused. His eyes were narrowed coldly, as if he was staring daggers at Jianshen. A ruler armament was far too important to them. Not only was it something more than just a family treasure, it was also an extremely powerful weapon. "Correct, the item you want back no longer exists." Jianshen smiled. A series of emotions flickered through the two saint rulers' faces, but they had quickly calmed down. They hadn't believed that Jianshen had managed to destroy the ruler armaments, since Jianshen was only a Heaven Saint Master. And a Heaven Saint Master wouldn't even be able to put a scratch in it, with even a Heaven tier battle skill. They were after all items that a saint ruler left behind. How could it be that easy for it to be broken? Sneering, Patriarch Shi spoke. "Jianshen, I can see that you're not willing to give back our items. Then let me tell you, the seal of Treasure Mountain has gone through many years as a bonded item to the Shi family. Only those who possess the bloodline of the Shi family would be able to use it. You are not of my family, and neither are you a part of my bloodline. Even if you use some secret method, it would be useless. The item serves no use to you, and only adds to your troubles. Why not return it to us, and we'll wipe away this grudge? My Shi family won't send any more people to come kill you after." "That is right. Jianshen, I must insist on the return of the ruler armament. Take advantage of when I am willing to negotiate with you, to return the ruler armament to me. My Jetta clan will write off our debts as well, and cause no more trouble with you. You won't need to stay within Mercenary City your entire life." The saint ruler from the Jetta clan spoke prudently, while Jianshen was sitting right in front of the two saint rulers. Even they wouldn't move a finger to hurt him in Mercenary City. If Jianshen stayed within the city without leaving, then they would be powerless to retake the ruler armaments. Rather than to wait around in vain, they would rather take the suave approach and try to reclaim it that way. "My apologies, but what I just said should explain it all. The items you want are no longer on my person." Jianshen spoke, unmoved by their attempts. The saint rulers had a cross look on their faces. To them, this was a terribly bad situation, since they were now worried that their ruler armaments were now in the hands of another great faction. If that was the case, then it would be a very hard matter to reclaim it. "Then who has the seal of Treasure Mountain?" Patriarch Shi boomed. Pointing up into the sky, Jianshen replied, "No one has it. It has already been lost to this world. Or perhaps to say, it has already become a part of me." The Duanyan sword and the seal of Treasure Mountain had already been turned into chaotic force to temper his body, so he had found this way of saying it to be quite fitting. But Jian Chen's words had been like a clap of thunder to the two saint rulers' ears. Confused and stunned, they stared at him. What? The seal of Treasure Mountain has become a part of you? Have you fused with it? Patriarch Shi shot straight up from his seat and gave a wide-open stare at the other saint ruler in disbelief. Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat when he saw their reactions and heard their question. From this, he realized that there was some sort of use for the ruler armament. Could it be that a ruler armament can be fused with the body? Jian Chen thought to himself. This piece of information was rather valuable since he lacked a weapon at the moment. If he could truly fuse with a ruler armament, then if he forged it with the azulite swords, he could perhaps find a ruler armament compatible with the light wind sword. Unfortunately, while he now knew that the ruler armament could fuse with the body, he didn't know the specific method for it. The two saint rulers in front of him knew, but Jian Chen couldn't simply ask them, since it would be a complete fail to do so. Moreover, even if he did know, finding a ruler armament that was compatible with the light wind sword would be a very hard task. Thus, Jian Chen knew that this thought that had only just popped up would not be something that he could accomplish in any reasonable amount of time. No, that can't be possible. The ruler armament is something that a saint ruler left behind. In order to fuse with it, one would have to be a saint ruler at the 9th heavenly layer. You are nothing but a heaven saint master. How could you fuse with a ruler armament? Jian Chen, do you take us for a 3-year-old child that knows nothing better about the world? The saint ruler of the Jetta clan shook his head. In his mind he was secretly aghast. If his ruler armament was truly fused with Jian Chen's body, then it would be forever lost to him. The words of the saint ruler of the Jetta clan had made Jian Chen sigh. If he wanted to fuse with a ruler armament, he would need to be a saint ruler of the 9th heavenly layer. And that was still quite a distance away. I've said it before. If you two don't believe me, then my apologies. Your junior still has some matters to take care, and cannot accompany you any longer. Goodbye. Jian Chen had no longer felt inclined to talk to them any longer, and stood up from the table to walk back to his room. In no time at all, he had disappeared from the eyes of the two saint ruler. The two saint ruler had stared at the back of Jian Chen until he had disappeared away from sight. For a good while, neither of the two responded. Ever since they became saint rulers, this was the very first time they had met a heaven saint master that did not show them courtesy. Finally, Patriarch Shi clenched his fists tightly as he stared at the spot where Jian Chen had last been before disappearing. Clenching his teeth as well, he spat. Jian Chen, if you refuse the carrot, then you'll not be spared the whip. Do not blame us. The other saint ruler had sighed at his words. It's unfortunate that this is mercenary city. With just ourselves, we have no way of touching him. Neither do we know where the ruler armaments are. Just why can we not sense them if they are so close? They have to be on his body. He must have used some sort of secret method to separate the connection between our ruler armaments and us. But what can we do about it? He still has the imprint of death on his body. No matter where he runs off to, we'll be able to find him. That is, unless he stays within Mercenary City his entire life. Patriarch Shi spoke under his breath before leaving the inn with the other. Not too long after the two saint rulers left, a good portion of the patrons within the inn had done so as well. Each one of them were from many different factions, and had been there to spy on the meeting, before reporting back to their respective factions. In a corner of the inn, Hu Xiaotian had been eating a platter of barbecued meat by himself. Giving only a vague soliloquy to himself, he spoke. Even after that loud conversation, not a single bit of it could be heard. That must be the power to control space itself. Only a saint ruler could do magic like that. It seems that the enemies of Jian Chen aren't unordinary themselves. Should I help him, I wonder? After a moment's consideration, Hu Xiaotian sighed. The clan has never once meddled with the affair of the continent. And with my strength as a heaven saint master, I'm powerless to help. For the next series of days, Jian Chen spent the entire time within the room, having the sword spirits try and remove the imprint of death on him. Not once did he ever step out from the inn. In this time, plenty of people from plenty of factions came to seek out Jian Chen with greetings and promises to help Jian Chen out with his problem. Each one of them had the condition that Jianchen join their faction, and some of them had been extremely generous, so that Jianchen would be tempted. But Jianchen had no desire to join them, as he did not want to owe any person anything. As more and more factions began to try to recruit Jianchen into their ranks, the Shi family and Jie clan grew more and more worried. These factions that wanted to recruit Jianchen weren't too much weaker than they were, and some of them were people that even the two of them were afraid of. Up against this deadly situation, the two of them had no other solution but to watch in silence. Although the two of them had plenty of connections in their own right, they both knew that even if they tried to call upon those connections to fight Jianchen, it would be useless. Several days later, the third prince of the Qinhuang kingdom, Qinji, and several other imperial advisors had came to Mercenary City to find Jianchen. He and the other four had given Jianchen a message that allowed Jianchen to stay even longer in Mercenary City and to not make any more enemies for the Qinhuang kingdom. Qinji hadn't stayed within the city for long. He and Jianchen had only given a few sparse words of conversation before the prince left. He had been in a hurry, giving Jianchen a bad feeling that something was about to happen to the kingdom. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. In these 2 months, Jianchen had spent day and night trying to remove the imprint of death. After these 2 months of vigorous work, the imprint of death had 2/3 of it successfully removed. In the case that it was completely removed, then he wouldn't have to worry much anymore, and could think of a way to escape the Shi family and Jie clan, and gain a new leash on his freedom. In an inn not too far away, the two saint rulers were currently watching the window to where Jianchen's room was. The ruler armaments were far too important for them to give up, so they could only spend their time observing him themselves without letting him escape. It's been well more than half a month since his last step out of his room. I've heard that he once managed to escape detection while under close watch. Shi Qing, Jianchen has the imprint of death on him thanks to your family, so why don't you check up on it? We should avoid to have a situation where he escapes from under our noses. The saint ruler spoke. Patriarch Shi nodded his head and closed his eyes to sense the imprint of death. But as soon as he did so, his eyes flew open in disbelief. The imprint of death is weakening. It's practically gone. He's managed to remove most of it in such a short amount of time. Even the saint ruler of the Jie clan was surprised. What? He has a way to remove the imprint of death. We have to hurry then. Once that's gone, making sure he's around will be significantly harder. Chapter 612. Death of the Saint Ruler of the Shi family, 2. In the history of the Tianyuan continent, each and every person that had the imprint of death afflicted onto them had been unable to remove it. This was due to the vital energies that were used to create it. The complexity of the patterns were far too much for pure energy to completely remove it. In the case that one was afflicted with the imprint of death, the only way to remove it was to completely exhaust the vital energies within the body as well. A heaven saint master used the energies that he had accumulated for plenty of years for the imprint of death. Without fail, this was a tremendous amount of energy to use. It would require several hundred years if anything to remove. But Jianchen had not only managed to find a way to do so, he had found a way to do it quickly. This was something that the two saint rulers felt incredulous about. The two of them knew just how important the imprint of death was. In the case that there was no reaction from it, then it would mean that Jianchen had escaped from their range. Even as saint rulers, it would be hard to find Jianchen without the imprint of death. The Tianyuan continent was far too vast, and had a sea of people to hide within. All in all, it was like finding a needle from a haystack. Jianchen in this moment was currently resting on the bed with the azure and violet sword spirits working hard to erase the imprint of death. He had been completely oblivious to the fact that the two saint rulers were now aware of what he was doing. Just then, a knock on the door made itself known. The door had been bolted shut with an iron lock, but it had been knocked off its hinges and thrown to the floor unceremoniously to reveal the two saint rulers walking in. Slowly opening his eyes, Jianchen looked at the two saint rulers with calm eyes. I've underestimated you, Jianchen. I didn't expect to see that you have a way to remove the imprint of death. How could there be such an easy way to remove the imprint of death? Patriarch Sure spoke dangerously. He had been secretly glad of the fact that the other saint ruler had reminded him. Otherwise, Jianchen might have really escaped under his nose as soon as the imprint of death was gone. Knowing that the fact that he could remove the imprint of death was now discovered, Jianchen was not discouraged. He knew that in Mercenary City, there was nothing the two could do even with that knowledge. Seniors, you are quite powerful to realize what I was up to with such little information. But even now that you know this, what can you do? If I had only a little longer, then I would have thrown off the imprint of death and escaped. Jianchen smiled. You dare? Patriarch Sure boomed with anger as he pointed a finger at him. The imprint of death had been casted by a Heaven Saint Master. If it were so easily removed, then that Heaven Saint Master died in vain. Smiling at the Saint Ruler as if to ridicule him, Jianchen spoke. This junior would never dare. But don't forget that this is Mercenary City. Would you two seniors really try to fight me here? The expression on Patriarch Sure's face grew even more murderous. His eyes looked as if they could spit fire at Jianchen. And if looks could kill, then Jianchen would have been dead just from the man's glance alone. Seeing that Jianchen had been so smug, the other saint ruler couldn't help but give a small smile. Jianchen, you shouldn't count your eggs before they hatch. Even if you remove the imprint of death, you cannot escape from us still. I have a secret technique that allows me to place a seal to see the location of the person its own. It isn't as powerful as the imprint of death, but it will serve us nicely in this situation. At that, the saint ruler began to go through a series of hand gestures. Several illusionary patterns began to exude forth from his hands, and with each hand seal, a strange energy began to form in those patterns. Jianchen had blanched at that, and lost all of his initial calmness. If the saint ruler wasn't lying, then with whatever technique the saint ruler had on him, Jianchen would be no better off than before. This was not something Jianchen had expected. His eyes narrowed with a brilliant cold light as he cautioned the saint ruler from the Jetta clan. This is Mercenary City. Are you really going to move a hand against me? This technique of mine doesn't hurt the person, and neither does it go against any rules of the city. I will be fine and worry-free from the rules. The man spoke with confidence. His hands hadn't stopped moving at all since his previous statement, and the energy that was forming in them had started to grow even more condensed than as they entered the complicated pattern in the air. Bastard! Jianchen had cursed to himself. With no desire to be stuck with whatever tracking technique the saint ruler had, Jianchen grabbed the still sleeping tiger cub and leapt out the window to escape. Pa! Jianchen! Do you think you can escape from my grasp? The saint ruler sneered before rushing out with Patriarch Sure. The outside city had been very busy at that current moment when Jianchen had dropped to the ground. Bursting with speed into a random direction, Jianchen had no delusions that he would be able to escape from the two saint rulers. They would be able to catch up with him at any time. So Jianchen had been desperately thinking of what to do as he ran. The most important thing to do at the moment was to escape direct contact from the two. This way, he'd be able to escape the Jetta clan's saint ruler's technique from being placed onto him. It was unfortunate that there were barely any hiding spots in Mercenary City, and that his pursuers were saint rulers. If he had perhaps met the conditions in being able to enter the general headquarters to Mercenary City, he could probably be safe. But as of right now he could not. Jianchen, in front of a saint ruler, you are powerless to run away. At that moment, an elderly voice could be heard as the saint ruler from the Jetta clan appeared directly in front of him and blocked his path. Before Jianchen could even react, the energy in his hands shot forth towards Jianchen and melted into Jianchen's body with a speed like lightning. Just as this strange energy entered Jianchen's body, he immediately felt his entire body grow tense as the energy transformed into a net that surrounded the entirety of his entire body. He felt as if his mobility had been limited thanks to the technique in a fashion not too different from the pressure from a heaven-tier battle skill. He had grown cold when the implications of this technique hit him. Not only did this technique make it easier for the saint ruler to find him, but it also limited his very own mobility. As of right now, Jianchen could feel that it was significantly harder to move in comparison to before. Jian, how does this feeling suit you? This technique of mine doesn't have the same length of range as the imprint of death, but even the imprint of death doesn't boast the same effectiveness of this. It can restrict your movement as long as you are weaker than I am, and until then, there is no way you can break free of this technique. The Saint Ruler laughed in sadistic delight. Clenching his fist tightly, Jian grew even more furious at the man. He had never thought that this would happen to him. The imprint of death he had on him was just nearly removed before this sudden development. This newest event had only meant that his plans would be further delayed by a long length of time. Big brother, did you come across trouble again? Are these two people chasing you bad guys? Suddenly, a voice suddenly made itself clear in Jian's mind. The ethereal body of Little Spirit suddenly materialized right in front of Jian's eyes, with her transparent feet hovering just a meter over the ground. It seemed as if her body was only visible to Jian, as the entire street was filled with people, but not a single one of them seemed to have noticed her existence. Little Spirit had sensed the technique that had been used on Jian's body, causing her pure and childlike body to twist up in anger. Big brother, you're being bullied. Those two must be bad guys. If they are, then don't worry, big brother. Little Spirit will help you. With that, she pointed a finger at Jian. A strange beam of energy flew out from her extended finger and met with Jian's body to instantly dispel the entrapment that had been placed on him. With his technique broken, the Saint Ruler had sensed it as well. Confounded, the Saint Ruler spoke to Jian with some startled disbelief. But how? I can see that you broke my technique somehow. No, that shouldn't be possible. Not possible at all. How could you have enough power to overwhelm my technique? Patriarch sure had heard what the other Saint Ruler said, and was equally astounded. This brat is a freak, he muttered. Not only can he remove the imprint of death, he can even break free from the technique you placed on him. Perhaps there's some sort of treasure on his person? Big brother, don't be surprised and go after them. Beat them down quickly. Teach those baddies a lesson. Little Spirit floated down to Jian's side as she snarled angrily. Because of the fact that Jian was being bullied, Little Spirit was glaring hatefully at the two Saint Rulers. Little Spirit, this is Mercenary City. It's not a place where I can fight as easily as I want. If I do, then I'll suffer an extremely terrible punishment. Jian spoke reluctantly. Big brother, don't worry. All of the punishments from Mercenary City were caused by Little Spirit. But Little Spirit won't punish Big Brother this time. So hurry up and teach them a lesson. They can't fight back. But if they do, then Little Spirit will definitely punish them. If Master didn't prohibit Little Spirit from hurting people, then Little Spirit would have taken revenge for Big Brother already. Jian had been motivated by what Little Spirit had been saying. For the past 2 months, he had been pressured and stifled by the presence of the two Saint Rulers. Today was the day he could finally vent his sufferings to the two without them being able to retaliate. This was something that gave Jian no small amount of joy. He had never once experienced chasing after a Saint Ruler before. A surge of energy began to bubble up from within Jian's body, before leaking out of it to spread out to pressure the two Saint Rulers. Grasping at his right hand, Jian began to unleash the origin energy, so that it would form into a sword-like item to fight with. The sudden action of Jian had caught the attention of the entire street. When they saw the strange look in his eyes, everyone had thought that they were about to see Jian start to fight within the city. One by one, they shook their heads with a pitying laugh. In today's age, just what person didn't know about the prohibition on fighting that Mercenary City enforced? When the two Saint Rulers saw what Jian was doing, Patriarch sure looked at him as if he was an idiot. Jian, don't tell me you're planning to start a fight within the city. That's an action of someone who is tired of living. Jian, even we too are afraid of fighting in Mercenary City. You are only a Heaven Saint Master. If you wish to continue living, then cease what you're doing. Otherwise, there will be no one to save you. The Saint Ruler from the Jetta clan sneered. Chapter 613. Death of a Saint Ruler 3. Jian could only laugh when the two Saint Rulers spoke. How could they know about the new relationship between Little Spirit and him? With Little Spirit giving her guarantee, Jianchen could fight within Mercenary City, without regard of the rules and the violations. He was after all aware of the connection between Little Spirit and the man known as Mo Tianyin. More accurately, the man known as the founder of Mercenary City. With such a peculiar identity as that, Little Spirit was without a doubt a very important entity of the city itself. It was unknown, however, whether or not Little Spirit had a status that was even larger than Tianjian. Without any more hesitation, Jianchen flickered towards the two saint rulers to stab at the forehead of the nearest saint ruler without mercy. Startled, the saint ruler from the Jetta clan had taken a step back. He didn't think that Jianchen would indeed start to fight in Mercenary City. Instead of fighting back, the man had merely stepped away from the attack with a smile. Jianchen, you really do fear nothing if you are willing to fight in Mercenary City. Your death is inevitable now. No one can save you anymore. There had been no response from Jianchen. Instead, his entire figure blurred away into thin air as he charged once more after the saint ruler. There had been no need to hold back against a saint ruler, so the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits had been utilized to the best of his efforts. Glowing with a bright azure and violet light, it seemed to light up the entire area, as if it were a lantern at night. The saint ruler from the Jetta clan didn't dare fight back while he was in Mercenary City. He knew the consequences of those who did, and so he had merely dodged Jianchen's strikes instead of retaliating. Only his body could be seen flickering back and forth between places as he dodged each strike without difficulty. Even though Jianchen was trying his best, it had been completely ineffective against a saint ruler. A saint ruler was on a completely different level from a heaven saint master. They were entities that understood the supreme mysteries of the world to some degree, and could control the fabric of space to a minor extent. By borrowing the power of space, they could stand completely still like a wooden stake impaled in the ground, and still remain unhurt by a heaven saint master. In front of a saint ruler, all else were ants. To intimidate a saint ruler would require another saint ruler. But even though Jianchen couldn't injure the saint ruler, he wasn't discouraged by the fact. He could fight without fear, or needing to hold back unlike the other two. Chasing after the saint ruler relentlessly, he had managed to force the saint ruler into dodging. This had served as a cathartic form of delight to him, on a personal level. As of right now, he wanted nothing more but to let loose to the heavens, and let loose the frustrations that had been accumulating in him. Leaping up into the air, Jianchen wielded the sparkling origin energy, like a sword to stab at the saint ruler from the Jetta clan. Once more, the saint ruler had flickered away, leaving behind only a mirror image at his previous spot, and reappearing several hundred meters away on top of a nearby roof. The origin energy that Jianchen had shot out impacted against the ground, resulting in a tremendous explosion that rocked the entire area, and caused several of the nearby buildings to tremble slightly. But from where the origin energy had struck the ground, there had been no signs of damage, even despite all the power that had been contained in the blow. The sudden explosion had been carried farther away, however, resulting in people everywhere being surprised by the sound. One by one they had revealed a shocked look. It had been unknown just how often they were able to hear the sounds of a battle take place in Mercenary City, but not a single one of them had thought that there would be yet another person that would try to do so. There's someone fighting over there. Who's the suicidal idiot? To fight in Mercenary City? Does he not know the prohibition and the punishment that'll take place after it? The guy has to be strong based on the sound of that explosion. I bet it's a heaven saint master at the very least. Let's hurry on over to watch. Let's see just how that offender's going to die. Let's hurry on over to see what punishment will befall him. I've heard before that to try and fight in this city would lead to a painful experience, but I didn't think that it would actually be death that'll befall the offender. Plenty of people began to talk to one another on the streets, as they ran from every direction to converge onto the area where Jianchen and the two saint rulers were. Every single one of them had wanted to see the man who would be struck by the punishment of Mercenary City before he died. In the blink of an eye, the previously sparse strip of street Jianchen was on had become a cacophony of sounds. merchants and mercenaries alike had abandoned whatever they were doing to fly over to the area as soon as possible, whether it was on foot or on magical beast. With the commotion being spread farther and farther away, more and more people began to converge into the area to watch the spectacle. On one hand, they wanted to watch a good fight, and on the other hand, they were curious to see just what punishment would befall the offender. Everyone had heard of how the punishment would be severe, but the details of it had never been fully divulged. Soon enough, the fight between Jian Shun and the Saint Ruler from the Jetta clan had drawn practically everyone within the surrounding area. Some of the spectators had even been people with major influence and groups behind them. That's Jian Shun. AI, how could he be so foolhardy? Doesn't he know about the prohibition on fighting that mercenary city has? Even if he's a heaven saint master, he'll suffer the punishment from the barrier without fail. An elder wearing red robes sighed. It was the man from the Vulcan shrine. The man with the fan from the Daong clan had sighed as well, as if he was feeling regret. Jian Chen's death is inevitable. It's truly a shame. It's hard to come across a genius like this, but he decided to be so foolish as to start a fight in Mercenary City. Even if the Grand Elders of Mercenary City were to try and intervene, Jian Chen's fate would still not be changed. I didn't think that it'd be the king of mercenaries, Jian Chen, of all people, to be the one to start fighting. AI, how lamentable. He was a genius with no parallel. But now he will fall today here in Mercenary City. Does he not know that Mercenary City has prohibited fighting? In the case that there is a violation of the rules, then even a saint ruler would not be spared from the following consequences. This Jian Chen is really too reckless. AI, his unlimited potential will be stopped here today. He could have been a saint ruler in the future if it weren't for this act today. Recognizing Jian Chen as the offender, plenty of people had shook their heads with pity. The prohibition on fighting had been a rule that was set in stone since countless of years ago. In the history of those who broke this prohibition, each one of them had been penalized severely. Even saint rulers had fallen to this rule, while the weaker ones would quite often not even have their bones left behind to bury. So everyone thought that the heaven saint master Jian Chen would fall as well, even if he was the king of mercenaries. As of right now, Jian Chen was pursuing the saint ruler from the Jetta clan without reprieve. The origin energy in his hand shot forth continuously from his right hand, but it had never been able to land a clean hit onto the saint ruler. Each time, the man had dodged the strikes with ease, allowing the ray of origin energy to fly off unimpeded into the buildings to the side of the streets with a loud explosion. While the streets of the city were protected by a mysterious power to such an extent that the origin energy couldn't even leave a dent in them, the buildings were not covered by such a power. The very moment the bursts of origin energy had crushed the buildings like it was tofu and reduced it to scraps of metal. Watching Jian Chen continue to try and pursue him, the saint ruler laughed coldly. Jian Chen prepared to die. Then, borrowing the power of space, he warped over to another spot 100 meters away to dodge Jian Chen's strike. You from the Sher family, are you willing to fight against me? A mighty saint ruler is being forced back by an insignificant heaven saint master. Don't you think that's a bit an insult to your grand rank? Jian Chen jeered. It was not a very easy opportunity to find a time to fight a saint ruler like this. Because of the tremendous difference in strength, there was simply no competition between the two, and that had weighed heavily on Jian Chen. With a thought, the energy of the world began to rotate the wind elements around his body. With lightning-quick speed, he flew towards the saint ruler from the Jetta clan and extended his arms out. 3 bursts of sword chi flew out from his hand and arced through the air with the spectrum of a rainbow. Boom! As soon as the 3 bursts of sword chi zoomed towards the saint ruler, the man had dodged it easily once again to the side, allowing the sword chi to cause a nearby restaurant to tremble from the blast. Several wooden splinters could even be seen flying off. Get out of the way or get hurt in their fight. Someone from the crowd had cried out a warning, so that the other people in it could be warned to run as far as they could away from the scene of the carnage and fear. Although they were all strong in their own right, but they didn't dare act out in even a defensive manner to protect themselves in fear of being struck down by the punishment of the city. Since they couldn't use their own power to defend, they could only try to get away, so as to not be mixed up in what Jianchen was doing. Patriarch Shi had not been angry at Jianchen's response. Instead, he laughed coldly. Jianchen, your words mean nothing to me. The commotion you've caused in Mercenary City has already incurred severe consequences upon yourself. You will die today, and I won't be dragged down to the underworld with you. Clenching his teeth tightly, Jianchen spoke no more and chased down the other saint ruler. Despite the fact he couldn't hit him, he was determined to have him forced into something. Strange, he's fought long enough already, and several restaurants were destroyed by him by now. Why hasn't the city punished him yet? This isn't what the legends say about the city at all. An elder spoke curiously from within the crowd. Chapter 614. Death of a Saint Ruler of the Shi family 4. There's a fight going on, but what's strange is that the offender hasn't yet fallen to the punishment from the barrier. Why can't any energy be felt now, when it was always prevalent in the cases before? A middle-aged man spoke in confusion in the middle of a room. Don't worry about that for now. As men of Mercenary City, we should be upholding the laws of the city and stop them from fighting. Let us move out. An elder in the center spoke before moving to fly out of the place. But before he could even get 10 meters away, the man's flight had been halted dead away, causing him to float motionlessly in midair. Sensing the oddity that was happening, the elder spoke in disbelief. Not good. There's something locking down my ability to move. Hurry and warn the elders. The other Heaven Saint Masters that hadn't yet moved out had been startled to hear that. Without any delay, they rushed off towards the lord of the city and out of sight. Not too long later, 3 elders had made flown out from the city lord's mansion. Each one of them wore simple clothing, but their faces were kind and amiable in appearance. The 3 of them first stared at the fight first with bright eyes, before looking to the still deadlocked elder in the air with furrowed eyebrows. What is going on? The elder in the middle asked. The 3 of them had sensed nothing out of the ordinary aside from the fight going on in front of them. There hadn't been any strange disturbances in the space around them. Even from the elder, who was locked straight in midair, had nothing strange around him in the eyes of the 3 newcomers. Nothing was wrong. The other people around the elder nodded their heads, as if to agree with his confusion. One of them spoke with furrowed eyebrows. Legend has it that no matter how fast one tries to strike another person, they'll never be able to land a blow. The reason for that is because it is said that the barrier would strike down the offender before the blow can even land. But judging from this situation, the legends does not quite meet the expectations. Yes, this is utterly strange. The 2 of them have already played cat and mouse for more than several dozen exchanges, and caused a tremendous ruckus. Why hasn't the punishment of Mercenary City befallen him yet? What is going on then? Every single person that has violated the rules of Mercenary City fell to the punishment in the past, have they not? So why hasn't it happened this time? Perhaps Mercenary City has gone on for such a long time without any incident like this before, causing the people in charge of administering punishment to become lazy? The longer this went on, the more and more people realized that something wasn't right. They talked to one another to speculate just what was happening, and to try and find answers to their questions. Patriarch Shi stared up at the gigantic barrier that spanned across the entire Mercenary City in surprise. Then, looking back to Jianchen as he fought the other saint ruler, he muttered, "What is going on? Jianchen has already fought for long enough. Why hasn't the punishment befallen him yet?" In the center of Mercenary City, not too far away from the statue of Mo Tianyan, there was a giant palace that was established as the mansion of the city lord. But to uphold Mo Tianyan's sovereignty even after his departure, a second city lord was never declared, and so the palace had been reformed to serve as a connection to the outside world. Within the palace, several white-robed Heaven Saint Masters floated in midair as they listened to the faraway sounds of battle. Each one of them had signs of confusion on their faces. A report for the elders. My body can't move. Not even a single finger." The voice of the still-frozen elder could suddenly be heard as he cried out in panic. Boom! Just at that moment, an explosion could be heard straight ahead, as a giant restaurant came crashing down in the midst of smoke spiraling up into the air. The battle had not seemed to have been weakening in the slightest. Instead, it was ramping up in ferocity. There are people fighting there, so why hasn't the barrier punished the offenders? How peculiar. One of the elders spoke in confusion. Turning to look at the two elders next to him, he spoke. No matter who they are, if they dare fight in Mercenary City, they cannot be pardoned. 23rd Elder, 24th Elder, you two will go over there and handle the situation. I will see what happens from there. With that, the elder pointed at the stuck Heaven Saint Master in the sky. The two elders nodded their head before disappearing in a blur of mirror images towards the scene of the battle. But just as they traveled a mere 10 meters, their bodies seemed to have made contact with some sort of invisible barrier and caused their forward momentum to come to a screeching halt before being sent flying backwards. Boom! The two elders impacted against the walls of the palace ruthlessly, sending a tremendous shake throughout the palace. You two, what's going on? The 22nd elder spoke in absolute stupefaction. He couldn't believe his eyes on what he was seeing. The 23rd and 24th elder staggered up from the ground in pain, as they stared at the empty space of air where they used to be. That's the power of the barrier. The barrier just repelled us. But no, that shouldn't possible. How could the barrier have that power to stop us? What? You were stopped by the barrier, is that true? The 22nd elder gasped out in disbelief. It is absolutely true. The two of us have lived in Mercenary City for long enough. Do you think that we would be unfamiliar with what the barrier feels like? It was the barrier that stopped us, but I don't know why. Just why is this happening? This can't be a small matter. We must notify the Grand Elder. The 24th elder spoke with determination. Disappearing into the palace without further notice, he left behind the still confused 23rd and 22nd elder. This sudden development had caused a tremendous amount of pressure to fill the hearts of the two elders. As soon as the 24th elder left, the 22nd and 23rd elder were left immobile in place and could only watch the fight from far away. The barrier over Mercenary City had served as the city's patron guardian since it was created. For countless of years, it silently protected the entire city, making it something like a god to some of the inhabitants of the city that could not be offended. Not only was it a part of the long-standing history of Mercenary City, the most important thing about this barrier was that it was created by the one known as the strongest person on the Tianyuan continent, Mo Tianyan. This had brought up a completely different feeling for the barrier than previously considered, and many had seen the barrier as something that represented the glory of Mercenary City even. So when the barrier that had been previously silent as it protected the city, before suddenly prevented the elders from stopping this battle, the 22nd and 23rd elder had been dumbfounded. For countless of years, they had never seen something like this happen before where even they of the city were stopped. All of a sudden, the space in front of the two elders began to ripple as if it were water. Then, a fissure formed in the middle of the space to form a dimensional gate for three white-robed elders to step on over through. One elder was standing up front, while the other were stood behind. The one in front was a middle-aged man with black hair and a steadfast face. His eyes were incomparably bright, as if they contained all of the stars in the sky. Just by staring at them, it seemed as if it would be possible to be lost in them. This person was Ming Dong's uncle Tianjian. The two men behind Tianjian looked to be around their 70s. With their long hair and time-worn faces, their eyes seemed to look as if it had lived through countless years of living and had seen all sorts of things that happened to the world. As of now, they looked to be men that had rejected the mundane world in order to live a secluded life, and the aura that they exuded around their bodies was anything but ordinary. We pay our respects to the Grand Elder, Second Elder, and Fourth Elder. The two elders immediately moved to bow their bodies as a sign of great respect. The sight of these three elders were enough to instill both respect and fear into the two. What is going on here? Tianjin spoke out at once. Grand Elder, there are people fighting in Mercenary City. The 24th Elder and I have tried to stop them, but the barrier not only stopped us, it threw us back into the palace. The 23rd Elder spoke. The three elders that had just arrived had been shocked to hear that. Turning around to look at the scene of the fight, the Grand Elder had been able to see the situation, as if it were happening right in front of him. It's him. As soon as the scene was made available to him, Tianjian let out a surprised sound. Grand Elder, do you perhaps know the one that is fighting? The second elder asked. Nodding his head, Tianjian responded. The one fighting the Saint Ruler is called Jianshen. He's the one that won the gathering of the mercenaries. As far as his talents go, he's someone that can only be seen once every 10,000 years. Smiling, the second elder spoke. Haha, if the Grand Elder is able to praise him, then this Jianshen is surely quite the person then. But this youngster is far too rash if he's starting a fight in Mercenary City. Does he not know the consequences of fighting in Mercenary City? Still, it's strange. Why hasn't the barrier punished him yet? I find that strange as well. But we must move to stop him. If we allow this to continue, we may see the death of such a talented genius happen. That would be far too unfortunate. Tianjian commanded before urging his body to move out towards the scene of the battle. Don't move. You shall not pass. Suddenly, the voice of a young woman made its way into the elder's ears. Tianjian's body had immediately seized up before he looked around the place with astonishment. Are you the spirit of the barrier? For a good while he did not speak. But then when he did, his voice had been filled with shock. Even as he asked, he felt as if his ears were deceiving him. You can say that, but you still can't go there. Don't bother with what's happening, or Little Spirit will hurt you. Little Spirit's words had caused Tianjian and the others to become as silent as a statue. When it came to status, they were the leading figures of Mercenary City and could make use of the city as they saw fit. When it came to power, they stood at the very top of the power pyramid of the continent. So to have what seemingly felt like a young woman threaten these powerful men, they didn't know whether to laugh or cry. But neither Tianjian nor the second or fourth elder had felt discontent at her words. As if everything was as right as rain, they had decided to stand there obediently to observe the situation without interfering. From there, they could watch Jianshen violate the rules of Mercenary City without being able to do a single thing about it. That was because the spirit of the barrier had an extremely unique status in Mercenary City. Spirit of the barrier, I never would have imagined that I would hear it speak. The legends are true after all. The barrier that protects Mercenary City is sentient. The 23rd elder remarked passionately. The 4th elder sighed in response. I've lived in Mercenary City for 4 millenniums now, but this is the very first time I've heard the spirit of the barrier speak. Haha, this is truly an honor to me. What year did I think that it would be before I could hear the legendary spirit of the barrier? Even if it is just the voice, I am satisfied with this. To what I know, the spirit of the barrier hasn't been seen or heard for 10,000 years already. But it has appeared this time with the appearance of Jianshen and has forbidden us to take action. Perhaps there is a connection between the two? Otherwise, for what reason would the spirit of the barrier protect Jianshen to the extent where no punishment has been inflicted? The second elder murmured with confusion and disbelief. Jianshen and the spirit of the barrier had a connection? That was quite hard to believe. I am curious about this matter as well. It would seem that Jianshen isn't as normal as I thought. Tianjian spoke questioningly. Continuing to pursue the Saint Ruler, Jianshen had without fail tried to attack the man to the surprise and discussions of everyone else around them on the streets. Each one of them were extremely curious on how Jianshen had managed to escape punishment. What's going on? Why hasn't the spirit of the barrier punished you yet? Has the barrier lost its power, or is the punishment no longer in place? The Saint Ruler could finally hold it in no longer, and cried out in frustration. Patriarch Shi's eyes light up with a strange light as he listened to the Saint Ruler. The barrier has to have lost its power. That's why it hasn't punished him yet. Jeditai, what are you worried about? Attack him. With that, Patriarch Shi had immediately moved into action to send a palm strike at Jianshen. Following the palm strike, the space around Jianshen seemed to solidify as Jianshen's body was suddenly rendered unable to move. As if he was stuck underwater, not even a finger of his could be moved and made dodging impossible. Around the patriarch's palm was a strong amount of saint force that continued to grow faster and faster. Even around the palm itself, the space began to distort and tear, as if threatening to open up a hole in space itself. The power that was in this palm strike was far stronger than what a heaven saint master could equal to, even if they used a heaven tier battle skill. But just half a step before the palm strike could make contact, a sudden beam of light came flying down from the heavens to strike him down with the speed of lightning. Chapter 6:15. Return to the floating shrine. The beam of light had been extremely scorching in its light, and basked the entire world in a radiant light. With unbelievable speed, it had been brought down onto the head of Patriarch Shur before anyone could even react. The rest of the Patriarch's body grew rigid following the advent of the light. His palm came to a stop in midair, and the furious amount of energy that had been warped around the palm disappeared into the world, without a trace, without the Patriarch controlling it. Even the space around Jianshen's body had begun to return to normal, allowing Jianshen freedom in being able to move once again. As soon as Jianshen felt his body go back to normal, he immediately leapt backwards several steps in retreat to get as far away from the Patriarch as possible. That palm strike of his just now had caused him to be completely terrified of the power. A saint ruler's strength was indeed far too strong. The saying that all were like ants in front of a saint ruler was without a doubt true. Even with his strength, Jianshen simply had not enough power or strength to dodge the saint ruler, and could only await death patiently. A heaven saint master was only a tier away from a saint ruler in tier. But in terms of power, the difference was akin to the difference between heaven and earth. There was nothing that could make up that deficient, and even heaven tier battle skills wouldn't be enough to bridge the gap. As if struck by a curse, Patriarch Shur's body had been stuck hovering in midair. The spirit in his eyes had long since left, making his eyes vacant in expression. Then, his body began to tilt to the side before falling back down to the ground, and crashing onto it, without any further movements. In mid-air, Jianshen stared at the saint ruler sluggishly. He had been surprised to see the sight in front of him. A saint ruler had actually died? He hadn't been the only one. The spectators who had originally thought that the punishment of Mercenary City wouldn't fall had all immediately turned silent. They all stared at the motionless body of the saint ruler in utter disbelief, and did not speak for the longest time. This sudden development had taken the saint ruler of the Jetta clan completely off guard. He had immediately taken back his palm when he saw what happened to Patriarch Shur, and even his entire body began to shake. It could be seen from this that even he was completely filled with terror. And no, that can't be. The one who struck first was clearly Jianshen. Why was he the one to escape punishment instead of Patriarch Shur, who struck only afterwards? This is impossible. The saint ruler cried out in disbelief. The fact that the barrier of Mercenary City had ignored punishment for Jianshen had given him no small amount of fear. As of now, the saint ruler was completely besides himself. By now, the streets were so jam-packed with people that even water wouldn't be able to make its way through. Not a single one of them spoke, however, leaving the place to be completely still. Only the continuous sounds of breathing could be heard, as everyone stared at the dead corpse of the saint ruler in silence. Even Jianshen himself was completely still, as if some sort of curse had petrified him. He was no longer as awe-inspiring as before with his movements, as he was now looking at the completely dead corpse of the saint ruler. He had been killed just like that so easily, and Jianshen had been utterly astounded by it. "A big brother, what are you so stunned about? There's still a baddie over there. Hurry up and beat him. Don't let him get away. If the baddie doesn't fight back, then Little Spirit can't hit him." Little Spirit's voice suddenly made itself known in Jianshen's ear, before her body suddenly materialized in front of him, with both of her fists brandished outwards, as if ready to punch the saint ruler. Startled awake by Little Spirit, Jianshen immediately quashed the feeling in his heart, and rushed for the saint ruler. Seeing that Jianshen was rushing at him, the saint ruler had blanched. No longer wishing to stay within Mercenary City, his body flickered away with the speed of light, before finally disappearing from Jianshen's sight. "Don't let the baddie get away. Big brother, chase him down, hurry." Little Spirit spoke out anxiously from the side again and again. If not for the fact that she couldn't attack the Saint Ruler, she would have perhaps helped Jianchen earlier to strike him down. A bitter smile appeared on Jianchen's face. Little Spirit, you overestimate my abilities. He is a Saint Ruler. How could I even catch up to him? AI, that baddie ran away. He runs too fast. Little Spirit spoke hatefully. She had held a grudge against the two men that were bullying the one she regarded as her big brother. Slowly descending back down from the skies, Jianchen looked at the corpse of Patriarch Shi in silence for a moment. Then squatting down next to it, Jianchen took the space ring of his. Inside would be the items that a Saint Ruler would have, and would undoubtedly be far more precious than what could be found within what a Heaven Saint Master would have. Suddenly, Jianchen swung his head to look up only to see several people flying on over. In a moment, they arrived right in front of Jianchen. And when Jianchen saw the middle-aged man heading the front, he immediately spoke out in respect. Junior Jianchen pays his respects to Senior. Jianchen arced his body down politely. The person in front of him was Ming Dong's uncle, Tianjian. Tianjian stared at Jianchen with an extremely complicated expression before looking to the recently deceased body of Patriarch Shi. Jianchen, come with me. At the final syllable, Tianjian turned around to leave without a single ripple of space being affected by his movement as he flew away. At the same time, a strange energy enwrapped around Jianchen's body before it carried him up into the air and towards the center of Mercenary City. Afterwards, Jianchen followed Tianjian and the other elders through a series of space gates before finally returning to the floating shrine that stood alone in its own special space. The 22nd elder and 23rd elder had not followed them, and only Tianjian, the 2nd and 4th elder, followed Jianchen into the shrine. Jianchen turned around to look at the shrine curiously. This would be the second time he had seen this place before, but perhaps it was because his strength was far stronger than before that Jianchen felt that the shrine felt extremely different than before. Standing at the center of the shrine, Jianchen felt as if he was some sort of insignificant speck within the boundless space itself. In the shrine, there was a mysterious and profound sensation that would flow about the place and bask Jianchen within that feeling. Even if Jianchen were to try and pinpoint this feeling, he would not be able to. Jianchen knew that this shrine had to be filled with the profound mysteries of the world, and was a place that would be good to break through to become a Saint Ruler. Such a great opportunity was standing right in front of him. But he was completely unable to enjoy this great bounty, and could only watch as the profound mysteries of the world flow by his body. Right in front of Jianchen, Tianjian and the two elders stood shoulder to shoulder as they observed him. It was the 2nd and 4th elder most especially that were watching Jianchen with undisguised shock, praise, and a slight amount of curiosity. Nervously, Jianchen stood at the center of the shrine. He knew that these three men held unbelievably important statuses within Mercenary City, and was thus afraid that reprimand or punish him for violating one of the rules of Mercenary City. After all, he had caused a tremendous ruckus within the city, and not only did he destroy multiple buildings, he had caused Mercenary City itself to be negatively influenced by the fact that he escaped punishment. Jianchen, are you able to tell me just how you were able to fight within Mercenary City without punishment befalling you? An echo sounded out through the shrine as Tianjian finally broke the silence. Although he knew that the spirit of the barrier was connected, he wanted to understand just how close the two were and what their relationship was. Jianchen gave a small hum to think before replying. Everything was because of Little Spirit's help. How did Little Spirit help you? How do you even know Little Spirit? The 2nd elder suddenly blurted out. As he was now, the 2nd elder was extremely nervous and curious to know the answer of this question. Jianchen hesitated. He had no idea just how to answer this question, since even he was confused how Little Spirit and he were connected. He couldn't exactly say that he had the scent of Mo Tianyun on him, and that Little Spirit had decided him to be a family member almost. Don't you bully Big Brother. Just at that moment, Little Spirit's voice rang through the entire shrine. Her ethereal body made an appearance within the shrine, And even though entrance within the shrine itself was extremely difficult, she had done so without difficulty. This time, she had not bothered to hide her body so Tianjin and the two elders were able to see her clearly. Spirit of the barrier. The three elders spoke out all at once in surprise. Looking at little spirit, the three of them remained stunned for a very long time. This would be the very first time they would see little spirit. Although the spirit of the barrier had existed for countless of years, it had never once appeared in front of them, and had long since become a legend of Mercenary City. This was the very first time many of the elders had ever seen or heard the barrier of the spirit. And to see her in person caused the three elders to feel excited and joyous. Floating just 3 inches away from Jian Chen's side, little spirit spoke earnestly. Big brother, you don't need to be afraid. As long as little spirit is here, they won't bully you. And then turning to the three, she continued to speak. You are not allowed to bully big brother or else little spirit will hit you. The three elders didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they heard what little spirit said. From this, they could all understand that there was undoubtedly a deeper relationship between the two. But that had been very shocking to them. None of them had known just how Jian Chen was able to meet with little spirit, and so the mystery had only thickened. Spirit of the barrier, worry not. We will not bully your big brother. Tianjin smiled as he spoke to little spirit with respect. This was the silent guardian that had protected Mercenary City for countless of years. Her position in the city was irreplaceable, and furthermore, as a creation left behind by Mo Tianyin, this meant she was a being that existed during the time of Mo Tianyin. It was only after hearing those words that little spirit began to relax. Turning to look at Jian Chen, she spoke. Big brother, little spirit will leave first. We can play after you come out. Understood. Jian Chen smiled and nodded his head towards her in response. Revealing a sweet smile, little spirit's body began to fade away from sight before disappearing without a trace. After little spirit left, the three elders looked back to Jian Chen once more with an even more complicated look than before. Jian Chen, I had no idea that you had such a relationship with the spirit of the barrier. I am truly speechless at this sight. Tianjin sighed. But then, his eyes suddenly noticed the tiger cub that was starting to look around the place with great curiosity. Brought into a daze once more, his eyes immediately focused into a serious expression as he asked, Jian Chen, where did you get that magical beast on your shoulder? Seeing the sudden change in Tianjin's expression, Jian Chen's heart skipped a beat. Hiding away the cub in his embrace, he gave a hollow smile. Senior, this is Xiaobai. I found him in the magical beast mountain range. Let me see. Tianjin boomed. Then without making any visible movements, Tianjin had suddenly surrounded the tiger cub in a mysterious energy, as it was in Jian Chen's arms. Separating the cub from Jian Chen, Tianjin had the cub float 3 meters away towards where he was. Suddenly, 2 bright golden rays of light shot forth from Tianjin's eyes and basked the tiger cub's body within it. Chapter 616. Minor Achievement with the Chaotic Body 1. Senior, don't harm Xiaobai. Jian Chen cried out, as an uncomfortable feeling began to arise in his stomach. Jian Chen, don't worry. We won't hurt it. The second elder spoke up in reassurance as he looked at the tiger cub. His eyes had immediately hardened with a strange light, as if they were night pearls giving off light. Even the fourth elder had been attracted the tiger cub with extremely serious eyes. Thumping again and again, Jian Chen's heart had been besides itself, as he began to worry for the cub. Despite the second elder's guarantee not to hurt the tiger cub, Jian Chen was still very concerned for its well-being. Did they perhaps figure out the true identity of the tiger cub? Jian Chen thought to himself. He had had his doubts about what the tiger cub's mother had said before about how only Class 7 magical beasts would be able to figure out the lineage of the winged tiger god. At the time, even the elder in Longevity Valley had been able to see through the tiger cub, and now in Mercenary City, there were 3 elders that could do the same. Mrrr. Struggling as hard as it could in midair without success, the cub let out a miserable growl as it stared at the elders pleadingly. Seeing how afraid the cub was, Jian Chen could hardly take it. But because he had no way of saving the cub, he could only watch helplessly from the side. Several moments later, the beams of light finally receded from Tianjin's eyes. For a while longer, he stared at the cub with sparkling eyes, but his thoughts could not be guessed. "Grand Elder, how is it? Is this tiger cub really?" the second elder asked. Nodding his head, Tianjin spoke to Jianshen. "Jianshen, tell the truth now. Did you really find this white tiger cub at the Magical Beast mountain range?" Jianshen hesitated for a moment before responding. "Senior, do you know the truth behind the cub's identity?" With still gleaming eyes, Tianjin stared at Jianshen almost as if he could see straight through him and into his mind. "Correct, I know of its true identity. Seeing how nervous you are now, you must be aware of it too." Since Jianshen hadn't said a word, Tianjin continued to say, "Jianshen, the winged tiger gods are divine beasts even amongst the magical beast clans. Even after the countless of years that have passed, only one has been seen since antiquity. And now that a second one has appeared, it is by no doubt a major event. In the foreseeable future, who knows just how many people on the continent will be flustered about the sighting of one. At that time, even the guardian clans won't be able to stop them all even if they come out all at once. You must tell me everything you know about the cub. It pertains to the entire safety of mankind on this continent." Hesitating from where he stood, Jianshen took it into consideration for a while longer before finally deciding to say everything he knew about the tiger cub. As of now, the king of the Gilligan clan was after the tiger cub, and even the mother of the cub had nearly died to the king. That could be said that despite the tiger cub's strength, the leader of the magical beast clan would without a doubt have a blood debt with it. But even in the future when the cub grew up, it was possible that the cub would not bring calamity to the continent. Besides, with his relationship with the cub, Jianshen was convinced that if something were to happen, he would still be able to convince the tiger cub into not doing anything dangerous. Afterwards, Jianshen revealed all that he knew and all that he had heard to Tianjin and the two elders, causing the three to furrow their eyebrows. The winged tiger god is a divine beast, but if the king of the Gilligan clan is chasing after it, it seems this situation is extremely complicated. If my expectations aren't wrong, then the ones chasing after the winged tiger god want to take its corpses and inheritance before absorbing it into their own body to become a second divine beast. The second elder speculated grimly. It's possible. If any of the magical beasts were to receive the inheritance, then it would be a catastrophe for our continent. Even if the entire continent were to ally itself with the Bai clan, it wouldn't be a match for the magical beast clan. The fourth elder spoke seriously as well. Hearing the three speak, Jianshen knew that the matters were extremely grim and could not help but think heavily. Still staring at the cub, Tianjin spoke. "Second elder, fourth elder, do you two perhaps remember the first law left behind by the Grand Elder?" "Of course. The Grand Elder's laws are something that Lord Emotianyan himself left behind. We have memorized all of the laws on it. It seems the Lord was prophetic with his level of foresight. Perhaps he realized that the continent would see a second winged tiger god that would see persecution from one of the magical beast clan. That must be why he wrote the laws." The fourth elder spoke. "What laws will they harm Xiaobai?" Jianshen asked in concern. As he stood in the shrine, his entire body could barely uphold itself due to his worry. He couldn't even protect himself in the shrine, let alone the tiger cub. And so he was extremely worried that one of these rules would harm the cub. Shaking his head with a smile, Tianjin spoke. "Jianshen, don't worry. Way back then, Lord Emotianyan made several laws that contracted all of the Grand Elders in it. It is equal to the laws of Mercenary City, and the very first one says that should we ever come across a winged tiger god that hasn't yet fully matured, we must lend it a helping hand." Jianshen had been stupefied. Still skeptical, he asked, "Does that mean to say that not only will you not cause trouble for Xiaobai, you'll be helping it?" "Correct. It is as you say. Although we don't wish to do so, for the sake of preventing disaster, we will honor the laws the Grand Elders put down." The fourth elder spoke. "Thank you very much, seniors." Jianshen spoke in relief and excitement. There's a few scant records about the winged tiger god in Mercenary City. Its talent is beyond the norm of any single person, and doesn't require the guidance of any human. Thus, what we can do to help it is quite limited, but the growth of such a tiger is very slow. The only way for it to grow as fast as it can is to feed it a large amount of heavenly resources. As such, we can only really give it some heavenly resources for it to mature. Tianjian spoke before moving his lips slightly to speak in secret to the men outside. Seeing that Tianjian was planning on giving the cub even more heavenly resources, Jianchen had been ecstatic. In this moment, it was like receiving charcoal in the middle of a snowstorm, since Xiao Bai was currently lacking a stable amount of heavenly resources. After using up most of the ones he bought recently, Jianchen was practically all out of heavenly resources to feed the cub. At that moment, an old man came walking in from the outside of the shrine. Presenting a space ring to Tianjian, he spoke. "Shrine Lord, I've accomplished your command. All there is to be found is in this space ring." Taking the space ring, he spoke. "You may leave." "By your leave, Shrine Lord." The elder retreated with a respectful salute. Walking slowly over to Jianchen, Tianjian handed over the space ring to him. "Jianchen, since the winged tiger god is accompanying you, then I may as well give this space ring to you. Inside is all that was left behind for the winged tiger god. In total there is 10 100,000-year-old heavenly resources, 110,000-year-old heavenly resources, and 1,000,000-year-old heavenly resources." Hearing this astronomical number, Jianchen had been stunned. Heavenly resources 100,000 years old. He hadn't even heard of such ones before Tianjian had mentioned them. There were also the 110,000 heavenly resources, which were each worth several million purple coins per head. And then with the 1,000,000-year-old heavenly resources, this was a tremendous windfall of heavenly resources. It was the 100,000 heavenly resources, most especially, that made this sum extremely priceless. Jianchen received the space ring from Tianjian with trembling hands as he spoke. "Many thanks, Senior." Chuckling, Tianjian spoke. "There's no need for your thanks. These heavenly resources were given to you in accordance to the laws put down by the Lord many years ago. They are not for you specifically." Jianchen gave an embarrassed smile at that. The tiger cub was now capable of moving by itself, and jumped back onto Jianchen's neck. As it held tightly onto it with its 4 short paws, the tiger cub stared at Tianjian. Although it was a divine beast, it was still a young child equivalent to a 3-year-old human. The winged tiger god requires a tremendous amount of heavenly resources, and the heavenly resources I've given you has already emptied our farms by 2/3. But that alone should be enough to bring the cub up to a Class 6 magical beast or the peak of it. Afterwards, you must go find some more heavenly resources by yourself. After the winged tiger god becomes strong enough, 1,000-year-old, and even 10,000-year-old heavenly resources won't have any effect on its growth. Tianjian explained. "This junior understands. Thank you for your warning, Senior." Jianchen replied gratefully. "You may leave, Jianchen. But remember to safeguard this secret of the winged tiger god. Do not let anyone else learn of it." Tianjian reminded him seriously. "This junior understands." Afterwards, Jianchen took the space ring with the heavenly resources and left the shrine. From there was a single heaven saint master that led him through several space gates to return to Mercenary City. "Big brother, did they cause trouble for you?" As soon as he returned to Mercenary City, Little Spirit's voice could be heard in Jianchen's ear as her body materialized nearby him without a sound. Nodding his head, Jianchen looked to her. "Little Spirit, thank you for your help." As long as Big Brother is fine, then all is well. Big Brother is the only one that Little Spirit sees as family besides Master in all these years after all. Little Spirit spoke happily. Chapter 617. Minor Achievement with the Chaotic Body 2. News of the fact that a saint ruler had been killed by the barrier of Mercenary City spread like wildfire throughout the entire city shortly afterwards. Practically anyone that heard of the news had been stunned into silence from it, as they processed the information with great shock. Saint rulers were extremely rare individuals to see on the continent. In the eyes of the general populace, people like those stood at the very top of the power structure. They were the ones who grasped the profound mysteries of the world and arrived at the realm where only the supernaturals could go to. A single lift of their hand was capable of destroying the earth around them, and even gods wouldn't be unharmed. So when a person of this legendary status had been killed by the punishment of Mercenary City, everyone had been thoroughly shocked once more by the severity of the punishment. Once again, everyone had acknowledged the power of Mercenary City, if they could so easily kill a saint ruler. Following the spread of the fact that a saint ruler had died, news that Jian Shen had been left relatively unharmed had accompanied it as well. Everyone was especially curious to know just how Jian Shen had been able to escape punishment, even though he had been the one to instigate the fight and destroy several establishments. No one knew the answer why. In a small kingdom roughly 50,000 kilometers away, a single person with a dowdy build was drinking a jar of wine and a platter of food by himself in a single inn. As he ate, he listened to the random gossip of the people around him with great interest, especially when it pertained to Mercenary City. With a voice just low enough for only himself to hear, he smiled. The barrier of Mercenary City was placed down by the unparalleled genius Mo Tianyan himself. It gained sentience a long time ago, so how could a measly saint ruler even compare to it? If a saint ruler were to fight, then even they would die without even a whimper. In all of these years, I wonder just how many saint rulers have, or will lose their lives to it. What do you guys think of this Jian Shen? Why do you think he was the only one to escape the punishment, even though he started the fight? Do you think it's because he's the king of mercenaries, or that he has some sort of connections with the higher-ups of the city? I'd have to say it's one of those reasons. I've heard that in the end, Jian Shen was brought away by several of the great ones without a fuss. I'd have to say that the most likely answer is that he has some connections with the power holders of HD City. There was a pure white tiger on his shoulder too. That tiger had wings on it. That can't be your ordinary beast cub. Yeah, can't be. Jian Shen is a heaven saint master. How could any magical beast cub he carry with him be of ordinary breed? That cub has to be a class 5 magical beast at the very least. Many people within the inn had been talking about the death of the saint ruler, but just as many people were talking passionately about Jian Shen himself. A snow-white tiger with wings on its back. Could that be? The man who had been sitting by himself suddenly had a sharp gleam of light enter his eyes as he thought to himself. It's very possible, but whether or not it's it or not, I have to make sure myself. But Mercenary City. At the mention of Mercenary City, the man had hesitated as fear shone in his eyes. But then with a final clench of his teeth and determination, the burly-looking man tossed a purple coin on the table and left the inn. In Mercenary City, Jian Shen sat on top of a bed with the azure and violet sword spirits, trying to purge the remaining parts of the imprint of death on him. Although Patriarch Sure had died, the imprint of death was still there, meaning the rest of the Sure family could still chase after him. Something like that was not a favorable thing for Jian Shen. Ever since the tiger cub had been given such a tremendous sum of heavenly resources, its growth rate was no longer a concern of vexation for Jian Shen. The cub could now eat without him being stingy, and Jian Shen had already fed it several dozen thousand-year-old heavenly resources for it before it fell back asleep on his bed, to absorb the power into its body. For the following period of time, Jian Shen hadn't stepped out from his room, and went silent from the outside world. For an entire month, he had been secluded in his room before the azure and violet sword spirits had finally managed to remove the imprint of death from him, without a single bit of it remaining. As soon as the imprint of death was gone from him, Jian Shen had been able to let out a sigh in relief. With the imprint of death on him, Jian Shen had felt as if there was always someone constantly watching him from the dark. Up until now, he had not felt as free as before and could not relax. Seeing that only a month had passed by, Jian Shen let out a small victorious smile as he spoke. I've finally gotten rid of the imprint of death. Who would have known that this small interlude would have taken 3 months? Any longer and 2 years would go by before little Fatty and I met again. I can't put it off anymore and head out right away. Big brother, you're finally awake. Little Spirit's voice rang through the room, before her body materialized in front of Jian Chen's sight. Little spirit, thank you for your help these past few days. But your big brother has stayed here long enough. I have important matters to do, and so I must leave right away. Jian Chen smiled. In the span of these few days, Jian Chen had begun to see little spirit as a little sister. So now that they had to split ways, he was feeling unwell because of it. But there was no other option. The smile that had been on little spirit's face slowly started to fade away when she heard Jian Chen. On her face now was a very lonely expression as she spoke softly. Big brother, are you leaving? Jian Chen had nearly hesitated to answer her after hearing the loneliness in her voice. Little spirit, your big brother has plenty of things that must be done, so I must leave the city. But don't worry, your big brother will come see you when there is time. But big brother, little spirit doesn't want you to leave. Could you stay here? Please. Little spirit has lost master for a long time now. Little spirit doesn't wish to lose big brother too. She pleaded as if she was about to cry. Giving a faint smile, he spoke. Little spirit, you won't lose your big brother. Your big brother is only going to be leaving for a short while. I'll be back soon to see you. I guarantee that within 3 years, I'll be here to see you, okay? Her mood rose up slightly after that. But little spirit still looked at him with reluctance. Big brother, you have to keep your word, okay? Don't lie to little spirit. You'll come see little spirit in 3 years, or little spirit will be lonely. Jian Chen nodded his head to guarantee her. Little spirit, rest assured. Within 3 years, your big brother will come back to see you. With his promise, little spirit had finally a sweet smile on her face. But then when she thought of something, her eyebrows furrowed together. But big brother, there's still that one bada that ran away. What will big brother do if he comes after you outside of Mercenary City? Narrowing his eyes to think, Jian Chen grew silent. After a while he spoke. The continent is a large one and has people everywhere. With the imprint of death gone, finding me won't be an easy task by any means for him. I'd say that he will be hard-pressed to find me. But in the case that he does, what will you do? Big brother, you aren't strong enough to beat that baddie. Little spirit can see that. In the case that you meet him, that baddie will definitely be stronger than you. You won't even have the chance to escape. Little spirit spoke with worry. It's sad that little spirit can't leave Mercenary City. Master also forbidden little spirit in interfering with the outside world as well. It's only when someone break the rules that little spirit can harm them. Otherwise, little spirit would go with big brother and beat that baddie that tried to bully you. She spoke sadly. But then in the next second she brightened up. Oh, big brother, there's a way. Let little spirit increase your strength. If big brother's strength is stronger than that baddie, then big brother won't have to worry anymore. A surprised light entered Jian Chen's eyes at that as he asked. Little spirit, don't tell me you have a way to increase my power? Of course. Big brother, little spirit is amazing. Little spirit can evolve the mysteries of the world into something big brother can understand. This way, big brother will reach the same realm of strength as that baddie. Little spirit spoke with great pride. Jian Chen had shaken his head with disappointment, however. Little spirit, to understand the profound mysteries of the world, requires the strength of a 6th cycle heaven saint master. Only those people have a grasp on the vital energy of the world, and by extension contact with the profound mysteries of the world. It isn't easy to understand those mysteries. And even with your help, your big brother would still require such a long time to become a saint ruler, I'm sure. Oh, then what do we do? Little spirit furrowed her eyebrows in frustration. If there was a tremendous amount of energy, such as from a ruler armament, then I could use it to refine it into chaotic force. Even if I don't become a saint ruler, I will at least be able to fight against a saint ruler. Jian Chen muttered as he thought about the chaotic force. Energy? Big brother, you only need energy to become even stronger? Little spirit's eyes lit up as she looked at Jian Chen. Correct. Jian Chen nodded. Growing excited, little spirit clapped her hands. Hee hee, big brother. You should have said that earlier. Little spirit can help you. Big brother, let me take you somewhere. As soon as she spoke, Jian Chen suddenly felt the space around his body start to ripple and fluctuate wildly. The world around him became an instant blur, before he was plunged into darkness. In this one moment, his entire world was deathly quiet. Jianchen couldn't hear a single thing, and even the noises from the streets outside his room had disappeared without a trace. In this one moment, he had left the noisy mercenary city and arrived in a never-before-seen place. Big brother, we're here. This is the place. Little Spirit's voice made itself known in Jianchen's ear. But Jianchen could see nothing. Even if he were to reach out with his hand, he wouldn't even be able to see his fingers. Closing his eyes, Jianchen spread out his presence in order to try and sense out the place. But what happened next had amazed him. There was some sort of powerful barrier that had blocked him from sensing anything. Little Spirit, what is this place? Jianchen asked curiously. Big brother, this is the space beneath Mercenary City, and also Little Spirit's home. This was also where Little Spirit was born. Big brother, don't underestimate this place. It may be dark, but it has plenty of energy here from all of the years Little Spirit spent gathering here. Chapter 6:18. Minor Achievement with the Chaotic Body 3. Surveying the area around him, Jianchen asked in confusion. Little Spirit, is there really a large amount of energy here? Why can I not sense a single thing? That's because Big Brother is surrounded by Little Spirit's barrier. Of course Big Brother won't be able to sense the outside. Big Brother, prepare yourself. Little Spirit is about to drop the barrier. She giggled. When Little Spirit dropped the barrier, Jianchen was immediately hit with an influx of energy from the surrounding area onto his body. The energy had been so powerful and massive that he felt as if an entire mountain had been dropped on top of his body and rendered him immobile. Even his fingers were hardly capable of moving. Stunned by the tremendous amount of energy that was trapping his entire body, Jianchen felt as if he was a small boat stuck out in the ocean. He was as insignificant as a speck of sand on the beach. Big brother, this place should have plenty of energy. It's everything Little Spirit accumulated over the years. Hurry up and absorb it. Big brother will become stronger that way and won't have to worry about the bad. Little Spirit spoke into his ear. Letting out a breath of air, Jianchen slowly calmed himself down and connected with the sword spirits. Wow, master, there's plenty of energy in this place. It's very strong, too far stronger than the energy in a ruler armament. That's good then. Since this place has a lot of energy, master, you should borrow this energy and reach the realm of minor achievement with the chaotic body. You'll be able to use chaotic force that way. Qingxua and Ziying had been awakened by the external sensations they felt and let out gasps in amazement and joy at the revelation. Upon hearing that absorbing the energy in this place would be enough to get him to the minor achievement realm with the chaotic body, Jianchen had been filled with joy. And when he heard that he'd be able to use chaotic force at that point, he had been ecstatic. Ziying, Qingxua, let's begin right away then. Let's refine this into chaotic force. Jianchen ordered right away. He really wanted to see just how strong this minor achievement realm was. Yes, master. The two spoke right away before flying out of Jianchen's body. As soon as they exited his body, a pair of azure and violet light filled the previously pitch-dark area with their glow. With the azure and violet glow above his head, they quickly materialized into a semi-transparent body, just like Little Spirit. But their physical manifestations were of a pair of 20-something young male and female that looked to be like lovers. Ah, strange, who are you two? Did you just come out from Big Brother's body? Why didn't Little Spirit sense you? Little Spirit suddenly spoke out in confusion. Turning to Jianchen, she asked, Big Brother, who are those two? They look kinda similar to Little Spirit. Little Spirit, they are very good friends of mine. He replied. Oh, so they're Big Brother's friends. But if they're friends of Big Brother, then they're friends of Little Spirit. Oh yeah, how happy this is. Little Spirit has even more friends. And they're like me as well. Little Spirit let out a happy cry from the excitement of meeting two new friends. Ziying and Qingxua both looked at Little Spirit for a brief moment before Ziying stated, a strong soul. Qingxua's eyes were lit up bright as she spoke. This soul is a post-celestial being that has lived for a long time. But because of the inability to become a pre-celestial, Her sentience was unable to mature, and was stuck as a 2-3-year-old child. What a shame. Whatever the case, it isn't a good topic for now. Qingxua, let us not waste any time, and hurry up to refine the chaotic force. The sooner we do so, the sooner Master can form the chaotic body. Ziying spoke. Yes, then let us begin. Qingxua spoke. Holding Ziying's hand, the two of them began to synchronize their absorption of the energy. All of a sudden, the energy around them began to get sucked up into them at an accelerated rate. It was as if a whale was beginning to take in a tremendous amount of water. As the energy gathered around them, it contracted at an alarming rate in between their hands, before slowly forming the chaotic force. The rate of refinement into chaotic force was extremely fast, and took only a short few moments before the first strand of it was formed in Jianchen's body. Jianchen hadn't been idle himself. Controlling the first strand of chaotic force, he had it circle around his body, and used it to temper his entire body. As the strand of chaotic force slowly traveled around his body, the tremendous amount of energy slowly infused itself with Jianchen's body. His originally strong body was slowly being refined more and more, and whether it was his blood, muscles, or meridians, they were all being strengthened at a tremendous rate. By the third rotation, the chaotic force had completely lost all form of energy and disappeared from existence. And with the energy being infused with Jianchen's body, Jianchen himself could feel his own body grow drastically in power. Afterwards, Qingxua and Ziying focused on refining more and more strands of chaotic force to put into Jianchen's body. With plenty of them to use, Jianchen's body had exploded exponentially in might from the strengthening, and shot quickly towards the realm of minor achievement. In the darkness, time seemed to have gone into a standstill. There was practically no sensation of time even flowing, and no one inside this space seemed to be aware of anything. But then, a sudden crackling sound suddenly broke in the silence in this darkness. The skin of Jianchen's body began to crack in several areas like the webs of a spider, and in a few short seconds, not a single part of Jianchen's skin was left untouched by these cracks. It had been this grotesque sight that made Jianchen look as if he was a vase that was threatening to crack and fall to pieces. Even his handsome faces had been ravaged by the countless cracks. He looked like a monster, an utterly terrifying monster. And in the next moment, the fingernail-sized pieces of skin began to flake away from his body one by one. As each piece flaked away, a flawless jade-like skin could be seen replacing the pieces. His new layer of skin was as white as sheepskin, and it was extremely supple but flexible with the touch. In short, his skin was as flawless as the skin of a newborn, and would be the target of envy by any women. Whilst Jianchen's outer skin was undergoing a process of metamorphism, his muscles were also being elevated to new heights. Like the cicada shedding its carapace, Jianchen was undergoing a new level of evolution. Within this short amount of time, Jianchen's body had underwent a terrifying level of growth. At the same time, Jianchen could feel the chaotic force in his body become more smooth to the sensation and usage. He no longer felt the same pain from before when he used it. And at last, he no longer felt the difference in using the chaotic force than when he used the saint force. Both could be wielded by him at ease, as if it were breathing. He had been unsure of how much time had passed, but over 100 strands of chaotic force had been used for the sake of Jianchen's evolution. By now, the source of endless energy that was being fed into the sword spirits to be refined into chaotic force had been stopped, as there was no longer any need for it. Shortly afterwards, the voices of Qingxua could be heard. "Master, you've done it. You've finally reached the minor achievement realm with the chaotic body. You can now use the chaotic force." Startled awake, Jianchen retreated from his meditative state of mind and began to pay more attention to the new changes of his body. His face had been unable to hide his joy in fact. Although he didn't know just how strong he became on a numerical level, he was absolutely sure that the strength of his body had surpassed what a heaven saint master would be able to scratch. All that was left to see was how it would do against a saint ruler. Ziying, Qingxua, you two are more understanding of the chaotic force than I am. If I were to meet a saint ruler, would I stand a chance against them? Jianchen asked. Master, Ziying and Qingsua pay very little attention to the outer world, so we are not as knowledgeable about the strengths of a saint ruler. But with Master's current power, if Master were to fight that saint ruler, who ran away some time ago, then even if Master was unable to beat him, Master would be invincible at the very least. Ziying spoke. Is that right? Jianchen smiled joyfully. The minor achievement with chaotic force was truly something that would allow him to fight with a saint ruler. Master, the chaotic body is far from being enough. The chaotic body must coordinate with the chaotic force in order to show off its best strengths. From now on, Master must absorb the chaotic force in your body and condense it into your Naiden. Ziying spoke. Big brother, what is this chaotic body? And what's chaotic force? Big brother, little spirit can see that your body has grown even stronger now. Is that this chaotic body? Little spirit asked him curiously after listening to Ziying. Correct. Your big brother's body is the chaotic body, made from chaotic force itself. It is a very strong type of power. Little spirit, your big brother still wants to borrow the energy in this place. It'll make my power even stronger to be enough to deal with that bada. Jianchen said. Go ahead. Big brother can absorb as much energy in this place as big brother wants. As long as big brother will be safe from that bada, then take as much as you want. Little spirit agreed enthusiastically. Afterwards, Ziying and Qingsua held hands once more to absorb even more energy in the area to refine it into chaotic force. And Jianchen himself had closed his eyes to focus on cultivating, silently drawing the chaotic force around his body. He converted it into power for him to use, before allowing it to gather in his dantian, without it strengthening his body. Following the endless flow of chaotic force to enter his body from the outside, Jianchen watched more and more chaotic force assemble within his body and gather in his dantian to form a small soybean-sized gray sphere. With this gray sphere being formed, Ziying and Qingsua ceased in their actions and held out their hands. The energy that had been flowing into them had halted before flying into Jianchen's body, even faster than before. It was as if his body was an endless pit that accepted as much energy as possible, like a whale taking in water. If things were like before, Jianchen wouldn't have done things as such. This powerful energy would have torn his body apart but because he had already achieved a level of minor achievement with his chaotic body, he could easily withstand this without a problem or any feeling of pain. Master, your chaotic body has formed and your Naiden has formed as well. There is no need for us to help you convert any more chaotic force anymore. As long as there is energy from the outside world flowing into your body, your Naiden will convert it into chaotic force itself. Master, quickly convert this energy into your Naiden. Ziying and Qingsua will help you absorb it. Ziying spoke inside of Jianchen's mind. At a thought, the soybean-sized Naiden within Jianchen's body began to rotate faster and faster as the energy that was flowing into his body was being converted into chaotic force. Chapter 619. Leaving for Longevity Valley. As the boundless amount of energy flowed into Jianchen's body for him to refine into chaotic force, the amount of chaotic force in his body grew bigger and bigger. As a result, the chaotic core he had formed in his dantian had slowly increased in size, as well from a small soybean to a small fingernail size. Following the creation of the chaotic core, Jianchen felt his body be filled with an inexhaustible amount of energy. With a thought, he could easily control the chaotic force in his dantian to use as he pleased. He was no longer as powerless as he was before when he lost his saint force. Oh, big brother, you're amazing. You're absorbing energy so fast. Even faster than little spirit. And even with so much energy, big brother doesn't feel ill at all. Super amazing. Little spirit spoke as she observed how Jianchen was doing with a look of surprise. It had been unknown just how much time had transpired, but the core that was growing within Jianchen's body had only grown bigger and bigger. It was by now already the size of his thumb, and was still accumulating energy to a degree where Jianchen had previously thought to be impossible. Right now, Jianchen didn't even know just how much energy he had absorbed and processed. By now, the previously boundless amount of energy in Mercenary City had started to thin out to a considerable degree. Oh, big brother, you've already absorbed 50,000 years worth of energy little spirit accumulated. When will you be done? Soon enough. All the energy little spirit accumulated will be gone. Seeing the energy lessen, little spirit couldn't help but speak with a slightly pained look. But Jianchen had been completely entranced in his meditative mind state, and had not heard little spirit. He knew that since little spirit was protecting this place, there would be no dangers here at all, so he could focus completely on refining the energy. As thus his guard was at its lowest point, with the assistance of the sword spirits, a dreadful amount of energy was being absorbed at a constant fast rate. An unknown amount of time had gone on before the core in his dantian had grown to the size of an egg now, and the energy underneath Mercenary City was fewer than before. As Jianchen was basking in this completely euphoric feeling of his power being increased, the flow of energy into his body was suddenly stopped. Startled by this change in events, Jianchen awoke from his meditative state. As soon as he opened his eyes, Jianchen could see the still transparent figure of little spirit. But on her face was a look of misery as she wailed. Little spirit, what happened? He asked in confusion. Big brother, you can't absorb any more energy. You've already absorbed almost all of the energy little spirit saved up for 100,000 years. If this goes on, then the seal won't hold any more. Little Spirited spoke pleadingly. Seal? What seal? Jianchen started. He had been shocked as he didn't think that to reach the minor achievement realm with the chaotic body, he would have absorbed 100,000 years worth of energy that little spirit stored up. If not for her, it would have taken an extremely long amount of time to reach the minor achievement realm by himself. That was because a single strand of chaotic force was refined from a sea of vital energy of the world. It was tantamount to the strength of a single saint ruler. Oops! Little spirit clasped her mouth shut with both hands before shaking her head repeatedly. What seal? Big brother, you heard wrong. Little spirit, your big brother has exceptional hearing. You just said that if too much energy was absorbed, then the seal wouldn't be able to hold anymore. Little spirit, what seal is this? Jianchen gave a smile to her, but in his mind, he was extremely skeptical. Just how many secrets did Mercenary City have? Was there always a seal? What did the seal do? It's nothing. Big brother, you misheard. Little spirit didn't say anything. Little spirit waved her hands while she tried to persuade him frantically. Seeing little spirit act like this, Jianchen couldn't find it in himself to ask anymore. Although he really wanted to know just what this seal did. Seeing little spirit guard this secret so much caused him to think that he would be causing trouble for her if he persisted to ask. It was all because of little spirit's contributions that he was able to reach the minor achievement realm so quickly. As thus, he did not wish to do anything that would cause her difficulties. All right, little spirit. Your big brother heard wrongly just now. I don't know what this seal you're talking about is. Jianchen smiled warmly, but still, he had looked around the place curiously. He had wanted to see something at the very least, but it was still pitch dark. Even with the assistance of the glow from the azure and violet sword spirits, he was hardly able to see a short distance away. Everything was a blurry mess and nothing could be seen. Beaming with joy, little spirit spoke afterwards. Big brother, little spirit can see that you've grown extremely strong now. You should be able to handle that battle now. Let little spirit take you out of here then. As she spoke, a barrier had already enveloped Jianchen's body and carried him back to his original room in the inn. As soon as Jianchen reappeared in the room, the tiger cub had jumped onto his shoulder in delight. Using its short paws, the cub wrapped itself around his neck and let out a slow mournful purr. Petting the cub on its head and speaking several comforting words to it, Jianchen spoke to the seemingly empty room. Little spirit, just how long was I underneath the city for? Just about 15 days, big brother. Little spirit spoke as she materialized in front of him. Another month has gone by without my knowing. I didn't even feel 2 hours go by even. Jianchen muttered in shock. But even with that said, his eyes suddenly widened in shock as he looked down at his entirely naked body. His clothes had long since been ruined from the tremendous amount of energy that had flowed past it. Quickly putting on a new set of clothes, Jianshan then inspected his body to see just how big of a difference the chaotic force had made. After reaching the minor achievement realm, Jianshan didn't feel any change in his physique. But his stature had clearly grown even more firm than before. The biggest change was the fact that his body contained even more power than before. This power was so dreadfully big that he felt as if a single punch could destroy a mountain. Clenching his fist tightly, Jianshan let a careless thrust forward with it. As the fist passed through the air, the space around it distorted slightly. The power in this one fist was enough to cause more stress on the space than what it could even handle. It was something that a Heaven Saint Master could only show after using a Heaven-tier battle skill. But he was able to replicate it with a single punch. Wow! Big Brother's amazing! If Big Brother meets that baddie again, then there won't be any more need for fear. Little Spirit spoke up excitedly. Master, the strength of the chaotic body is far stronger than what you can believe. You've reached the realm of minor achievement, so the chaotic force is now distributed evenly through your body. Even if a saint ruler were to strike you, the amount of damage shouldn't be all that bad. Ziying spoke into his mind. At Ziying's words, Jianshan had felt extremely elated. Saint ruler of the Jetta clan, I Jianshan swear to find you. And the saint ruler of the sect of Dragon and Tiger, wash your neck and wait for me. Jianshan smiled coldly. Now that he was at the realm of minor achievement, he had finally reached a level where fighting a saint ruler was possible. There was no longer any need to fear a saint ruler. Afterwards, Jianshan and Little Spirit said their farewells before Jianshan brought the tiger cub with him out the room. Sire Jianshan. Jianshan, my friend. As soon as Jianshan went downstairs, a multitude of people came forward to greet him. Each one of them wished to pull Jianshan into their group, so that a good relationship could be formed between them. Because of his actions in Mercenary City, practically every family and household had thought that Jianshan had the support of a very powerful patron. Combined with his talents, he was someone that people would hold no expense to get to know. A connection with him would serve beautifully for them. After wasting some time dealing with the crowd, Jianshan gave a small smile and a few words before leaving with Hu Xiaotian away from the inn. Soon enough, Jianshan had left the city and had just overstepped the boundary of the barrier. Big Brother, you can't lie to Little Spirit. You have to come back within 3 years to see Little Spirit, or else Little Spirit will get angry. Little Spirit floated a meter high into the air, as she sent off Jianshan with a look of sadness. She was very unwilling to part with Jianshan. Little Spirit, be at ease, as long as nothing major happens. Your big brother will come back to see you. Jianshan guaranteed again for the third time, before stepping away into a blur. With his speed, he shot off towards the direction of Cross Mountains in no time at all. The illusionary step was a heaven-tier battle skill that Jianshan had once used. It held no offensive power, and only served to make one even faster than before. With that, Jianshan had been able to escape the pursuit of a Heaven Saint Master, even as an Earth Saint Master. But after the loss of his Saint Force, he had been unable to use the illusionary step. Though, with the chaotic force now being used instead of Saint Force, he could use the illusionary step once again. Only prairies were around Mercenary City, but Jianshan could be seen blurring past the prairies at tremendous speeds. Perhaps it was because of his illusionary step, but his speed now was far faster than what the power of flight could give him. Chapter 620, Meeting the Heiyun clan again. This illusionary flash is quite extraordinary. I've understood only a portion of it, and yet I am still this fast. It's far faster than flying. Jianshan remarked in surprise about the illusionary flash. And with the chaotic force feeding into the illusionary flash, he was going extremely fast for an extremely small amount of energy. As he sped through the plains and fields, he had been able to bask in the sensation of running fast. It had been a very long time since he had last felt it, and ever since he became a Heaven Saint Master, he had been flying everywhere instead. There hadn't been a need for him to use his legs to run. It was a decently sized distance from Mercenary City to Cross Mountains, at well over 500,000 kilometers. A distance like that had meant that it would take Jianshan nearly 4 days' worth to travel with the illusionary flash before he finally reached the mountains. But even after the 4th day of continuous traveling, Jianshan did not feel tired at all. The topography of the Cross Mountains was complex, and the paths were precipitous, so when Jianshan arrived, he didn't bother with the illusionary flash and continued to fly for the rest of the way to Longevity Valley. After 4 hours, Jianshan had finally arrived back at Longevity Valley. Following the twisting roads to the valley, Jianshan was able to then enter the hidden village. As soon the fragrant smell of the soil hit his nose, Jianshan felt as if he had stepped into a hidden paradise. There was not the bloody smell of the outside dog-eat-dog world to be found here, and Jianshan felt himself at an impeccable level of tranquility. After spending so long in the violent continent, Jianshan didn't know if there was ever a time he had been as calm as he was now. It was like there was some sort of hidden power in this land that negated the evil influences of the heart. It was high noon by the time he arrived at Longevity Valley. Plenty of villagers could be seen walking about, and when Jianshan entered the village, these villagers had noticed him right away. "Yeah, look there, isn't that there the Jianshan fellow? Brother Jianshan has returned." Many of the villagers spoke out excitedly. Some of them had thrown down their farming tools in excitement to go running towards Jianshan. In a flash, 3 of the more younger villagers had surrounded him and began to ask all sorts of questions about the outside world. "Brother Jianshan, how was the outside world? Was it fun?" "Big brother Jianshan, how far away was the outside world to our valley? When can you bring us there to play?" "Big brother Jianshan, I heard that the outside world is dangerous. Is it true? Did you face danger out there?" These 3 youths had blabbered on and on with questions for Jianshan to answer, but each question had been related to the outside world. They were villagers that had never stepped out from Longevity Valley and into the outside world. Because of that, they had never personally seen the outside world for themselves and was extremely curious as a result. "Jianshan," a dignified voice spoke out as Xiaomi came forward towards him. He had been shirtless and wore only short pants down below. "Uncle Xiaomi," Jianshan spoke out happily to him. He was the uncle of Little Fatty and was a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master. For him, there was only a small step before he would become a saint ruler. Nodding his head, Xiaomi looked at Jianshan carefully. "Jianshan," he smiled. "You must have come back for Little Fatty. That promise you made with him has passed several months already." Jianshan smiled apologetically. "Uncle Xiaomi, please accept my sincerest apologies. I had planned to return earlier, but I had been forced to delay my visit because of some unforeseen events." Xiaomi gave a loud laugh as he answered, "No worries, I know what the outside world is like. Whenever there is trouble that can't be avoided, it is only natural to be held up by it. But Jianshan, if you're here for Little Fatty, your arrival is a little untimely." "Why is that? Has Little Fatty not yet become an Earth Saint Master?" Jianshan asked. "That's not it." Xiaomi shook his head. "Little Fatty has exceptional talent. It's far stronger than mine, or my father's in fact. There had been nothing wrong with his development. He had only required a half year to become an Earth Saint Master, but because my father was not willing to let him go with you into the Tianyuan continent like this, he took Little Fatty with him to teach and give a few things to him. This way, when he goes to the outside world, he'll be able to protect himself." "Uncle Xiaomi, when will Little Fatty return then?" Jianshan asked. "It should be any time by now. I'd reckon 3 months." He replied. 3 months, that's enough time for me to handle a few things." Jianshan thought to himself. Afterwards, Jianshan made talk with Xiaomi for a while longer before handing several things to each of the villagers. Staying for a day, Jianshan then left on the 2nd with plans to return within 3 months to meet with Little Fatty. With Jianshan back on the continent, he brought the sleeping tiger cub with him to a smaller kingdom's first-class city to find a way to find out where the Jeddah clan was. Now that he was no longer afraid of any saint ruler, the Jeddah clan no longer imposed a problem to him. He had the strength, and he had the blood debt. When it came to an enemy like this, Jianshan would not forgive them easily. "My apologies, sire. The family you are inquiring about is a complete mystery to us. We are only responsible for information within a 50,000 kilometers perimeter. Perhaps this family you are looking for is beyond our area. A 70-year-old man spoke to Jian Chen within an information broker store. Sighing, Jian Chen held out a purple coin and gave it to him. Leaving the room, Jian Chen thought about the Jetta clan. It had been unfortunate that he felt helpless in trying to find where the Jetta clan was. If only I had known early to ask about them in Mercenary City, those men would have definitely known where the Jetta clan was. Jian Chen sighed to himself. Halt! Stay where you are. Hand over that beast's cub if you know what's good for you, or else you'll be carrying food. At that moment, a large ruckus could be heard at the end of a street. A single disheveled white-robed man could be seen running in between the crowd. His face was pale, and his body was clearly injured from how he was half-hobbling as he ran. Furthermore, the entire top half of his body was drenched with blood, as he carried a small magical beast. Right behind him, 3 middle-aged men were running at him with their saint weapons in hand. Each one of these 4 men were Earth Saint Masters, but their pursuit had been long enough for them to all be gasping for breath. With their current speed, it had not been long until the young man brushed up against Jian Chen. Just then, one of the 3 pursuers suddenly stamped hard onto the ground to kick off into the air. His entire body suddenly lit up with an azure light as he sped towards the youth and landed a kick onto his back. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the young man flew forward into the air before tumbling back down to the ground 20 meters away. The 3 men had immediately came forward to surround him with one of the 3 glaring evilly at him. Smelly brat. Let's see you try to get away now. We only wanted you to hand over that cub. There wasn't a need for you to be harmed at all. But since you've refused our kindness, we'll force you to hand it over then. Since you've killed 2 of our own, we'll make sure you won't get away. Don't even let him say anything and just kill him. This is for He Xiong and He Qing. The other man snarled before hoisting his sword up. Without mercy, he swung the blade down onto the youth's head. Widening his eyes wide, the youth watched the blade come down onto his head unwillingly. He had sadly been far too injured to move. Considering all the energy he spent fighting and running away already, he was completely out. Not a single iota of energy could be used, so he could only close his eyes and await death. Just as the blade was about to cut into his throat, a sudden burst of energy slammed against the sword and knocked it away from his body just narrowly. At this sudden development, the 3 men had looked startled. Each one looked to where the blast had originated from before one of them cried out. Which fucker is the one that's getting in our business? To interfere with the Heiyun clan is a suicidal act. Come on out. Everyone watching had been brought to a frenzy as they saw the young man about to be executed. But when they heard that it was the Heiyun clan, everyone had immediately grown quiet. Jian Chen slowly walked out from the group and smiled at the 3 men. So you're men from the Heiyun clan. I didn't expect to come across you today. I suppose that meeting my enemies on this narrow road was inevitable. In Jian Chen's mind, he thought back to when he had to escape from the clan with the tiger cub back in Thousand Poison Valley. That clan had been the Heiyun clan with a Heaven Saint Master. The 3 men glared angrily at Jian Chen one by one. The last one then spoke out. Brat, who are you? Are you the one that stopped us just then? Who I am isn't important. But yes, that was I. Jian Chen laughed. Chapter 621. Wang Yufeng brat. You're a reckless one if you're sticking your nose into the business of our Heiyun clan. Do you wish to die? One of the middle-aged men barked angrily at Jian Chen. Still smiling in disdain, Jian Chen replied, The way I see it, the ones that wish to die are you 3 and not me. You're going to die for that. The 3 men snarled with fury. Immediately, 2 of the 3 men charged with their saint weapons in order to teach this young man in front of them a rough lesson. Pointing his finger, Jian Chen allowed for 2 beams of sword chi to fly out towards these 2 men. PCHT. PCHT. The 2 beams of sword chi embedded itself into the male's forehead, and then out of it, leaving behind a huge cavity in their heads. There hadn't even been enough time for them to scream out before they died. But because of inertia, Their bodies continued forward another 5 or 6 meters, before finally coming to a stop on the ground with their eyes wide open in death. The fact that Jian Chun had killed 2 Earth Saint Masters, as if it were nothing with just a flick of his finger, had caused an endless amount of surprise to everyone watching. They had fled several meters away to maintain their safety, as they gasped in shock at the sight. Even those who had been standing nearby Jian Chun had kept their distance. Not a single one of them dared to draw any closer, as if afraid of causing trouble with this man. The single remaining survivor from the Heiyun clan had been dumbfounded by the strength of Jian Chun. He was fully aware of the strength of the 2 friends of his. They were stronger than even he was, so he was completely caught off guard that a young 20-something-year-old man would be able to kill them both so easily. But even despite his befuddlement, the man had quickly recovered. Without any hesitation in his decisions, he immediately turned around and fled. He was a clever person, and knew that Jian Chun had a bone to pick with his clan. If he stayed behind, then he would have been killed like the other 2 friends of his. And so the only way to survive was to escape as well. Leveling a calm stare at the escaping man, Jian Chun raised his finger again, and shot a beam of sword chi accurately onto the man's calf. The man had let out a pain-filled scream, as the beam straight through his leg. With pain shooting straight up through his leg, the man's ability to run had been knocked for a loop, causing him to fall to the ground. Slowly walking on over to the middle-aged man, Jian Chun looked at him with cold eyes. Where is the Heiyun clan located? There had been no fear in the man's eyes as he snarled back at Jian Chun. I'm not afraid to die. Whether it's by torture or by illness, you'll never get anything from me. You didn't seem to look like tough guy. Jian Chun smiled. The youth that had been chased by these 3 men crawled up to his feet, with a painful grit of his teeth. When he saw that the bird-like magical beast cub in his hands was unharmed, he let out a sigh in relief. After listening to what Jian Chun had said, he spoke. I know where the Heiyun clan is. His voice had been exuberantly weak, since his internal organs were heavily injured as well. A fearsome glint entered Jian Chun's eyes as he took in this information. If someone else knows the answer, what use is there for you? He spoke. With a single burst of sword chi, he stabbed it straight into the last man's head. Afterwards, Jian Chun walked up to the other youth. When he saw just how heavily injured the youth was, Jian Chun gave a small pause of hesitation, as if considering something. Then, he took out a radiant spirit pill from his space ring, and handed it to him. Eat this and recover your strength. You'll be taking me to the Heiyun clan, so traveling there as you are now would be inconvenient for the both of us. Sire, I thank you for your benevolence in saving me, but this item right here is far too precious for. The youth hesitated to take it. A Class 6 radiant spirit pill is nothing for me. Eat it. Jian Chun waved his finger, and levitated the pill into the youth's man, and then throat. With the radiant spirit pill ingested, the injuries that the youth had sustained was beginning to heal. Although it wasn't fully enough for a full recovery, it had served to heal him to a considerable degree. Sire, you've saved my life already, and now you're giving me such a precious radiant spirit pill to treat my wounds. I am truly at a loss for what reason Sire would be so benevolent. The youth spoke gratefully. I have a bone to pick with the Heiyun clan. Saving you was a convenient task to do on the way. There is no need for your thanks. Take that pill as recompense for you guiding the way for me. Jian Chun smiled. Sire, your generosity has earned my respect. I am Wang Yufeng. How may I address Sire? The man cupped his hands together. Your wounds have healed by now. Let us be on the way then. Take me to the Heiyun clan. Jian Chun replied. From this, Wang Yufeng knew that Jian Chun wasn't willing to give his own name, and knew better than to continue asking for it. The radiant spirit pill is truly a powerful pill. In such a short time, I feel my wounds already stabilized. Leading the way would be no problem at all with this short of a recovery rate. Sire, the Heiyun clan is about 5,000 kilometers away. Please allow me to guide you there now. He spoke before starting to run, but just as he took a single step away, Jian Chun had already held his shoulder tightly and allowed for the wind elements in the world to carry them both. With the wind carrying them swiftly up into the air, the two of them quickly became the size of an ant before speeding away into the distance. Heavens! That young man was a Heaven Saint Master. No wonder he was able to kill those 3 Earth Saint Masters so easily. He was a Heaven Saint Master. The people on the streets had let out a cry of astonishment when they saw Jian Chun bring Wang Yufeng away into the air, and began to gossip to one another. Looking down to see that the city below them was growing smaller and smaller, Wang Yufeng had been stunned. But soon enough, he recovered enough to look at Jian Chun in a completely different light. "You're a Heaven Saint Master," he exclaimed in shock. He had truly found it hard to believe that a youth that was younger than him was actually a Heaven Saint Master. Could this youth use some sort of secret technique to alter his appearance? But as he thought, a sudden realization hit Wang Yufeng, causing him to blanch. "Are you Jian Chun?" "Correct," Jian Chun confirmed. "Ah, so you're Jian Chun." Straight away, Wang Yufeng's face adopted an extremely emotional expression. The name of Jian Chun was essentially the same as a clap of thunder. Not only was he the king of mercenaries, he was also a Heaven Saint Master that had been able to kill 5 Heaven Saint Masters outside of Mercenary City, all by himself. Such a shocking battle prowess like this was absolutely breathtaking, and was far more than enough for any youngster to idolize him. Wang Yufeng had been no exception to this. Wang Yufeng had absolutely no idea that the person that had saved him would actually be the illustrious king of mercenaries, Jian Chun. Compared to him, Wang Yufeng was almost worlds apart in power and fame, and had thus left him utterly responseless. "I did not think that I would be able to meet the renowned Jian Chun. To be able to meet your acquaintance is an honor that I, Wang Yufeng, had never felt before. Jian Chun, although I am not as strong as you are, I am a 2nd cycle Earth Saint Master. If you will allow it, please allow me to accompany you in your travels. I will work as hard as a horse, and as loyally as a dog." Wang Yufeng looked expectantly towards him. He had been earnest in serving a Heaven Saint Master. It would not hurt him in any way, especially if that Heaven Saint Master was a practically unlimited potential expert like him. Shooting a glance at Wang Yufeng, Jian Chun shook his head. "I have plenty of enemies that are equally strong as I am in power. Following me would not be a good idea, or else you may find yourself stuck in a pit of eternal damnation. I, Wang Yufeng, am not afraid to die in order to live. I fear no enemy, and truly wish to travel with you. It would be far more marvelous to travel with you than with myself. Jian Chun, please accept me into your group." He spoke in resolution. He knew that this was an extremely rare opportunity, so he was very unwilling to let it go. Jian Chun had hesitated for a brief moment when he saw how resolved Wang Yufeng was. Thinking about how few people there were in the Flame Mercenaries that were loyal to him, Jian Chun reconsidered it. "Very well then. Since my mercenary group is short-handed at the moment, I'll accept you into it." Jian Chun's reply had caused Wang Yufeng no small amount of joy, and had him light up with excitement. "Ah, why were the men of the Heian clan chasing you?" Jian Chun asked curiously. A dark expression crossed Wang Yufeng's face in that moment. Looking down at the bird-like beast cub in his hands, he snarled. "It was all because of this beast cub that I was chased. A month ago, I happened across a steel-wing beast nest in a nearby forest. There was only a single cub, so I was fortunate enough to obtain the cub, after expending a large amount of my strength. But then the Heian clan accosted me on my way back, and wanted to take it from me for their own greed. I knew that I wouldn't be able to take them on, and fled for an entire month. Sometimes, I would barely escape death from their hands. And then it was at this final encounter that I was able to receive Lord Jian Chun's help." Chapter 622. The formidable chaotic force. Jian Chun turned to look at the magical beast cub in Wang Yufeng's hands. The beast cub was jet black in color, and was roughly the same size as his tiger cub. The wings of the bird looked as if they were made of hard iron, and looked similar to an eagle with its sharp sword-like beak. However, it was clear to see that this steel-winged beast was a newborn. It barely possessed any intelligence, and there was not a single bit of danger awareness to be seen. As such, it was currently quite content and quiet in Wang Yufeng's arms. unaware that the man who was holding it had killed its mother. Class 5 magical beast cubs that can fly are hard to obtain. If they are carefully bred from young until they mature, they will provide a great deal of assistance. However, riding a flying-type magical beast has its own risks associated with it. It would be best for a Heaven Saint Master to ride one. Jianshan spoke. Wang Yufeng chuckled in response. I understand that line of reasoning. The nature of a magical beast is a vicious one, which can often lead to them going berserk. I heard once that many of the more gentle flying-type magical beasts lose control of themselves, causing their riders to plummet to their deaths. However, I'm sure that I'll be able to reach the highest level of control with this one, so that such an event will never happen. In any case, a steel-wing beast is a Class 5 magical beast. When their intelligence matures, they'll be far more stable unlike the lower-ranked magical beasts, so the chance of losing control of themselves should be very low. Jianshan nodded his head in agreement. What you are saying makes sense. However, you must take advantage of the young age of the steel-wing beast and carefully nurture it. If it matures before you tame it, it'll only become harder. I know. For now, I will treat this little child as if it were my own. I will love it dearly. Wang Yufeng laughed. As they traveled, Jianshan and Wang Yufeng talked to one another. On the way, they talked about plenty of things, allowing Jianshan to gain a more in-depth understanding of Wang Yufeng. However, Jianshan did not once ask about his background, meaning it was still a mystery to him. That was because when one answered such a question, it was only natural that they would ask the speaker the same question. Don't ask, don't tell. That was how to avoid any careless slip of the tongues. The base of the Heiyun clan was in a first-class city around 5,000 kilometers away. With Jianshan carrying Wang Yufeng through the air, it took about 2 hours to arrive at the flourishing city. Afterward, Jianshan traveled to a large manor that Wang Yufeng had pointed out to him. He hovered roughly 500 meters in the air above it. The fact that Jianshan was using the wind elements in the world to travel had easily caught the attention of plenty of people below. One by one, they pointed at the floating figures in the air and started to gossip. The Tianzhu Kingdom was a country that could be said to be in the middling ranks. It was slightly stronger than the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, and Heaven Saint Masters could be said to hold mighty ranks here. Whenever one ventured out in public, they would catch the eyes of many people. Under Jianshan's grasp, Wang Yufeng was able to point at the manor beneath him and say, "This is the place. This is the manor of the Heiyun clan." Without even needing to ask Wang Yufeng, Jianshan could tell that this manor was indeed the base of operations for the Heiyun clan. That was because Jianshan had already scoped out the place with his presence and had a very clear idea of the terrain. Above the gates at the entrance of the compound was a signboard that made it all too obvious just who lived here. Inside the manor, Jianshan could detect 3 Heaven Saint Masters. One of them lacked both of his legs. It was the very same one that had tried to stop him in the Thousand Venom Valley and tried to take the tiger cub away from him. Heiyun clan, I Jianshan, am a man that keeps his word. I've come to settle the grudge made between us last year, and from today on, there will be no such thing as the Heiyun clan. Jianshan cruelly smiled. With a wave of his hand, the energy of the world came bubbling forth at rapid speed, to gather into a 10-meter-long sword made of fire. The heat that radiated off of the blade was scorching, and immediately elevated the temperature of the surrounding area. With a brandish of his hand, the fire sword immediately disappeared into a blur of red lightning that struck the manor. Boom! An explosion dispelled the silence in the manor, as a tremendous fire washed over the surrounding area. As the waves of flame billowed forth with great speed, the destruction of the manor continued without stop. In an instant, the previously tranquil Heiyun clan turned into a bonfire with flames that danced and roared. The blue sky above was covered by the pluming black smoke from the wreckage, making it extremely eye-catching to the people below. The interior of the manor was brought to a frenzy as countless servants and guards came running out of their rooms. When they saw the sea of flames, they all turned pale with fright and fled toward the outskirts with great panic, as if afraid that the flames would incinerate them before they could escape. What in the world is going on? A middle-aged man cried out as he barged out of his room. Up until now, he hadn't even realized that someone had attacked the Heiyun clan. Quick! Put out the fire! One of the more elderly caretakers cried out. But not a single person had heard him due to the intensity of the flames and the sounds that accompanied them. A few measly buckets of water wouldn't be able to put a dent in these flames in any case. Someone has attacked our Heiyun clan. Be on your guard, I said. The captain of the guards immediately commanded the rest of the guards of the clan, but when he realized that there were people floating in the sky, his face paled drastically. No, the ones who've attacked us are Heaven Saint Masters. That's not someone we can fight. Too quick. Call out the patriarch. At the warning of the captain, 3 separate entities flew out of the interior of the manor. The 3 men quickly soared to the heavens to meet with Jian Shun, and at the same time, an elderly voice called out with such volume that the ears of everyone else ached from it. You there, for what reason have you to attack my Heiyun clan? The elderly man called out with as much dignity as he could muster. But even his dignity could hardly hold back the furious anger the speaker had. Soon enough, the 3 Heaven Saint Masters arrived at the same altitude as Jian Shun, standing shoulder to shoulder just 20 meters away from Jian Shun. Each one of them looked ready to kill him. Who are you? State your name at once, and why you are attacking my clan. The bald elder standing in the middle barked out as he grasped his sword. The sharp point of the sword glinted ominously, and if it were any regular person standing there, their valor surely would have dipped to non-existent levels. Ignoring the elder that spoke, Jian Shun stared at the elder without any legs next to him. Jian Shun gave him a cold smile. Perhaps you might recognize me? The elder without legs obviously recognized Jian Shun, and let out a gasp in shock. It's you! In his mind, he couldn't help but think of the legends he had been hearing as of late about Jian Shun. His heart skipped a beat, and he contemplated trying to flee. Third elder, who is he? Do you know him? The bald elder asked. He's the one who's been making waves recently with the rumors. The king of mercenaries, Jian Shun. The elder barked with a great deal of difficulty. The bald elder blanched as well when he heard that. What? He's Jian Shun? Prior to this, Jian Shun had killed 5 Heaven Saint Masters by himself outside of Mercenary City. Even the news of his fight with 2 saint rulers within the city had been heard by these elders. Such a powerful figure like that was not an opponent that the Heiyun clan could take on. Even with the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, they stood no chance at all. So you do remember me? Then, I presume you remember what I said to you years ago. I said it once. If I, Jian Shun, am not dead, then I'll be sure to annihilate your entire Heiyun clan. I have never once reneged my words before. I will not let a single one of my enemies escape. And today is the day I make good on that promise of mine. Jian Shun laughed. The 3 Heaven Saint Masters blanched at Jian Shun's words. While 2 of the 3 men there had not participated, they all knew just what event Jian Shun was referring to. Sire Jian Shun, my Heiyun clan was the one at fault during that time. We give our sincerest apology, and are willing to offer ample compensation. We ask that Sire Jian Shun pardon our Heiyun clan, and we are more than willing to offer our assistance to you should you require us, or our territory. The bald elder's intimidating glare melted away to adopt an apologetic smile. His voice gained a softer tone, and no longer contained the iron edge from earlier. Unmoved by the proposal, Jian Shun chuckled. How lightly you treat your words. Back when I was on the verge of death because of your clan, this blood debt was formed. Just how could I give it up so easily? Only in your dreams. With that, Jian Shun spoke no more and immediately shot toward the head of the leading Heaven Saint Master. The chaotic force began to cycle around his body, and with a flash of light from his dantian, the energy flew into his palm. Now that he could control the chaotic force, Jian Shun's palm took on a gray color as a destructive amount of power came forth. The surrounding area around his palm looked like water as it distorted with ripples and waves. At this one moment, Jian Shun could feel the practically unlimited amount of power he was wielding. It was almost as if his hand could split apart the world around him, and a single punch could kill a Heaven Saint Master instantaneously. This would be the very first time he wielded such a tremendous power. With a grunt, Jianchen slapped the area around him with his palm, causing the space in front of the slap to distort so violently that a slight fissure formed. With such a destructive force being unleashed from his palm, it was as if a dragon had suddenly been let loose. Chapter 623. Destruction of the Heiyun clan. With such a destructive force being unleashed from his palm, it was as if a dragon had suddenly been let loose. The space beneath the strike surged violently as the powerful energy ravaged the area around it with dreadful might. The three Heaven Saint Masters could feel just how powerful Jianchen's strike was from the surrounding space. It was like an icy block that froze the three of them in place. Moving even a single finger became difficult. The three Heaven Saint Masters had only enough time to turn pale in fright before the boundless wave of energy slammed against their bodies unceremoniously. In the face of such a tremendous amount of energy, the three Heaven Saint Masters folded as if they were ants. Without putting up any resistance, their bodies split apart into a violent display of blood and gore. The palm strike of Jianchen had not stopped there. The influx of energy completely shattered the bodies of the three Heaven Saint Masters before continuing to slam into the manor below. Boom! Following a tremendous cracking sound, the entire world seemed to shudder, as if giving birth to an earthquake. Practically everyone in the city felt the ground beneath them shake, and several of the more shoddily built restaurants could not help but unsettlingly sway. Bits and pieces of the Heiyun clan's manor splintered into every single direction possible. At the center, the ruins of a tremendous strike could be seen. In an instant, the previously flourishing city was left a mess, and the Heiyun clan tragically suffered. The previous proud manor had been reduced to a ruined wasteland, and only smoke could be seen from what used to be the walls and roofs. At the very center of the manor grounds, a single hole about 100 meters wide and 10 meters deep could be seen. Furthermore, this giant influx of energy had damaged every single building within a kilometer radius. From the epicenter of the Heiyun clan, not a single building remained untouched by the blow. The might of the palm had caused such devastation. This was the power of a saint ruler. From his perch high in the sky, Jianchen observed his handiwork. He felt startled by the might of his own palm, and remained quiet for some time. He did not expect such devastation to occur after attacking the elders. Is this the power of the chaotic force? Jianchen thought to himself in surprise. The might of the chaotic force had indeed been out of his expectations. 3 of the Heiyun clan's Heaven Saint Masters had been killed so easily that it was almost as if they were nothing. His attack made him experience just how true the saying was. In front of a saint ruler, everyone else is an ant. That saying was a veritable truth. In front of a saint ruler, everyone else may as well be an ant. Even Wang Yufeng, who had been leading Jianchen, was rendered speechless by the devastation. His eyes were as round as plates, and his mouth had dropped open wide enough for an entire chicken egg to fit in it from his shock. He could see that Jianchen had only struck with his palm, yet that attack had killed 3 Heaven Saint Masters. Furthermore, it had brought forth such devastation. It truly filled him with disbelief, and for a moment, he doubted what he was seeing. He wasn't a Heaven Saint Master, but even he understood that a Heaven Saint Master shouldn't be able to cause this much destruction. Could Jianchen already be a... Wang Yufeng suddenly began to shiver as a question popped in his head. This thought that had suddenly popped in his head was so terrifying that even he wished to stop thinking about the answer. Plenty of people gathered in the surrounding area of the Heiyun clan to see the outcome. A procession of soldiers had already formed as well, but even they could only look up in misery at the floating figures above. Each spectator remained silent, completely shocked at the sight. The army of soldiers didn't dare say a thing. Despite the destruction of part of the city, not a single one of them was brave enough to even fart right now. The Heiyun clan held an extremely lofty and powerful status within the city. They had been the strongest faction in the city, and had been considered second to none even in the kingdom they resided. However, this mighty faction had been wiped out in an instant, and against their assailant, they might as well have been nothing. This was something that every single spectator found hard to believe. Half a moment later, Jianchen finally let out a long turbulent sigh to control his emotions. With a wave of his hand, he tossed several space rings into the hands of several people down below. "We're going," he informed Wang Yufeng before turning around to leave the city, leaving behind the dumbfounded citizens of the city. It had only taken a single wave of his palm to cause an irrevocable amount of damage to the Heiyun clan. The blood debt that Jianchen had with the Heiyun clan could be considered to be done and over with. The following days after, Jianchen relentlessly continued to try to find the whereabouts of the Jetta clan. The Jetta clan remained true to their label as a hermit family, staying hidden in a forest or mountain somewhere. They were an isolated faction that never showed their faces to the world, causing Jianchen to hear absolutely nothing that could lead him to their location. In fact, many of the people Jianchen asked had never even heard of their name before. However, the gods were willing to reward the hardworking man. On the third day of Jianchen's laborious attempt to learn of the Jetta clan's whereabouts, a relatively strong sect reported that they knew of the Jetta clan. Jianchen brought Wang Yufeng with him there. The Jetta clan was said to have been founded at the core of a mountain with countless of magical beasts standing guard around it. There was no shortage of Class 5 magical beasts there, and there were several Class 6 magical beasts that the clan had tamed. They were trained to guard the gates and to prevent any outsiders from entering. Jianchen brought Wang Yufeng to a spot 20 kilometers away from the reported mountain ridge. He then stared off into the distance at the series of buildings that sprung up from the ridge. "Wang Yufeng, you stay here. I will be fighting a saint ruler. Taking you there would only serve to hurt you." At the mention that Jianchen was about to start trouble with a saint ruler, Wang Yufeng's heart began to beat frantically. It was with great concern that he said, "Jianchen, your opponent is a man who became a saint ruler many years ago. Furthermore, this is his domain. If you're going in there alone, you must be careful. Relax. I'll be fine, but you must make sure to hide yourself away. Don't let the men of the Jetta clan catch you. There might not be any magical beasts around here, but make sure that you don't get caught by one nonetheless. Hide yourself now." Jianchen instructed before flying into the air to reach the Jetta clan. V. Chapter 624. Challenging the Jetta clan. There was a place in the backmost courtyards of the Jetta clan that the majority of people were forbidden from entering. This forbidden place was what many of the clan members considered to be a type of holy ground. Practically everyone bowed reverently in the direction of these grounds when standing near them. The patriarch of the Jetta clan would often shut himself off from the world in this forbidden place to focus on his cultivation. He was the sole saint ruler of the Jetta clan, and was the sole reason for the Jetta clan's status as a hermit clan. Within a flower garden in the Forbidden Zone, all sorts of flowers were blooming in a stunning fashion. A rich aroma wafted through the air, and a large rabble of butterflies could be seen flapping their wings gently as they traveled through the air, giving this deathly quiet area a vibrant feeling of life. At the very center of the flower garden was a wooden house. This wooden house clearly looked as if it had stood for a very long time. The wood was ancient, but despite that, it remained standing with signs of damage from the passage of time. It had clearly been worn down to the point where it looked as if it would collapse. Like an elderly man that seemed destined to fall at any moment, this house looked as if it was about to collapse on itself with a single totter. Within the house, the patriarch of the Jetta clan sat at a wooden table in the center of the room. His eyebrows were furrowed together as if deep in thought, and his face was covered with a look of worry. Ever since his escape from Mercenary City, the man had been living in unease without a day of solace. When he had first realized what was happening in Mercenary City, he had been deeply influenced by it. Jianchen was able to do as he pleased in Mercenary City without restraint, and for the life of him, the patriarch could not understand why. As a 2,000-year-old saint ruler, Patriarch Jetta knew a lot about the world. Even the barrier of Mercenary City was known to him to several degrees, and he knew that its capabilities were something that a Heaven Saint Master could never hope to match. Jianchen had violated the laws of Mercenary City, but he had not been punished. In the eyes of an outsider, Jianchun had clearly some sort of connection with the power holders of the city, but Patriarch Jetta didn't truly believe in that. He knew that the barrier of the city had gained sentient life, which had given rise to the rumors of the spirit of the barrier. It had already been countless of years since its birth, and the status it wielded in Mercenary City was something practically no one could ever touch aside from the founder of the city himself, Mo Tianyin. Not a single person could command the spirit of the barrier, not even the Grand Elder. Patriarch Jetta was completely convinced that the reason why Jianchun had escaped punishment had nothing to do with having a relationship with the power holders of Mercenary City. The elder was puzzled by the method Jianchun used to escape punishment. He was more worried about Jianchun's talents and the fact that he could not locate the Duanyan sword than the method Jianchun used to escape punishment. Patriarch Jetta was more than aware that Jianchun was skilled enough to reach the realm of a saint ruler soon. With such a powerful entity as an enemy, the Patriarch knew that it would lead to nothing good. However, the undeniable importance of the Patriarch's ruler armament meant he was extremely unwilling to forget about it. Not only was the ruler armament a treasure to the Jetta clan as their symbol of power, it was also passed down from generation to generation from the previous Patriarch. It held meaning beyond all else, and would be a great boon to him when he attempted to cross over to become a Saint King. A Saint ruler at the 9th heavenly layer would be able to fuse with a ruler armament, and in the case that one was successful in doing so, that Saint ruler's chances of making the breakthrough to becoming a Saint King would skyrocket. I absolutely cannot return to Mercenary City, but if Jianchun spends the rest of his life in Mercenary City without leaving, what good will that be? With time, even he'll become a saint ruler, and when the time comes, he definitely won't be easy to deal with. It seems I have no other choice. Even if I cannot take back the ruler armament, I cannot allow Jianchun to live any longer. Otherwise, he'll bring doom and destruction to the Jetta clan. The Patriarch muttered to himself. Suddenly, a tremendous power from outside suddenly made itself known to him. Sensing this provoking aura, the Patriarch sat upright. What power? Who might that be? He wondered aloud to himself before flying outside to greet the invader of his territory. Just 100 meters above the Jetta clan, the white-robed Jianchun hovered in place, icily looking down below him. His eyes were intimidating, and his aura was not concealed at all. It was there for the entirety of the Jetta clan to notice and tremble under. Suddenly, 10 different figures came flying up to greet him. One by one, they surrounded Jianchun in a tight ring with unfavorable expressions. Roar! 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 4 heaven-shaking roars could be heard as 4 different magical beasts came flying forward from different directions. Shortly afterward, the entire forest seemed to shake as the silent Class 6 magical beast protectors sensed the abnormality in the area and came to greet Jianchun. These Class 6 magical beasts were not similar to the ones born in the wild lands of Cross Mountains. They were born and bred from the careful and painstaking energy of the Jetta clan. As a result, the friendship between magical beast and humans had reached a skin-tight relationship. Over these years, these Class 6 magical beasts had spent their entire lives protecting the clan silently against any invader or mercenary that dared to draw too close. Boom, boom, boom. Following 3 separate muffled explosions, 4 large magical beasts made their way into Jianchun's line of sight. Jumping from the mountain range, the magical beasts were like miniature mountains themselves. With each step they took, the earth beneath them shook. They were pitch black in color, and stood on 2 legs exactly like how a human stood. The only exception was that their heights were roughly 30 meters tall, a height far taller than a human. Boom! Another muffled explosion reverberated across the sky, as the 4 Class 6 magical beasts positioned themselves 200 meters away from Jianchun. They stood in the cardinal directions, surrounding Jianchun yet again. Hemophilic apes. Jianchun recognized the 4 Class 6 magical beasts, feeling slightly surprised. Hemophilic apes were a type of magical beasts that had particularly bloodthirsty and violent tendencies. They were, as a result, extremely hard to tame, but the Jetta clan had somehow managed to perfectly tame 4 of them as protectors. To Jinshin, this feat was by no means a minor one. "Sire, who might you be? State your name and reason for coming." An elder intimidatingly barked at Jinshin. There had been no kind edge to his voice since Jinshin had purposely intruded upon the Jetta clan with such a powerful aura that was obviously intended to provoke the experts of the clan. Folding his arms against his chest, Jinshin stared at the several Heaven Saint Masters around him with a smile. "I'm the one you've been looking for, Jinshin. I came today to visit your Jetta clan." "What? You're Jinshin? So you're Jinshin. You have the guts to come knocking on our door to seek your death." As soon as they learned who he was, everyone felt surprised. Shortly after their surprised, they all laughed as a tremendous spike of killing intent suddenly erupted from their bodies. Roar! Sensing the hostility in their owners, the 4 hemophilic apes immediately identified Jinshin as an enemy. One by one, they let out a roar that shook the heavens as a bloodthirsty light entered their fist-sized pupils. The tiger cub on Jinshin's shoulder was none too pleased at the 4 Class 6 magical beast's aggressive behavior. Standing up, the cub let loose a mighty roar toward the 4 apes. Although the cub was extremely proud, it was still a Class 4 magical beast in strength. It was not yet mature enough to deal with 4 Class 6 magical beasts. Thus, the action of the tiger cub had not been an attempt to fight the 4 beasts, but to completely infuriate them. As expected, the 4 apes let out a furious howl before charging at Jinshin with great cumbersome steps. Not only did the Jetta clan do nothing to stop the 4 hemophilic apes, they took several steps away to give them space to fight. They knew of Jinshin's strength, and how he had been able to best 4 Heaven Saint Masters' Heaven-tier battle skills before killing the 4. His strength was not something that they could easily overlook, so they wanted the 4 apes to test his strength first. As if coordinating with one another, the 4 apes charged at Jinshin before leaping into the air. Their mountainous bodies were like great big cranes as they took flight, making their way 100 meters into the air where Jinshin was. Staring at the 4 hemophilic apes in disdain as they charged at him, Jinshin smiled cruelly. With a flip of his hand, a condensed blob of chaotic force encompassed it before he moved to slap them down. Chapter 625. Showdown with the Saint Ruler 1. The amount of power that Jinshin held in his hand rippled across the entire mountainous area, as if it were a heavy weight. With speed as fast as lightning, but no thunder to accompany it, the area beneath the strike started to look even more cramped than before. Then it seemed as if the entire area had frozen in time. The 4 hemophilic apes had only gotten within 50 meters of Jinshin before they were frozen in place. They had only been 30 meters in the air, but even their gigantic bodies were rooted firmly in place. Boom! Following their inability to move, a fierce amount of energy ruthlessly smashed into the bodies of the 4 apes, causing the Class 6 magical beasts to crash back down to the ground as fast as they came up. As they fell, blood was pouring from not only their mouths, but also their eyes, ears, noses, and even pores. Smashing against the ground with a terrible rumbling sound, the 4 hemophilic apes landed so roughly that the entire area shook several times as fissures started to form. Even the mountain ridge started to collapse. A 10-meter deep hole now spanned a perimeter of several hundred meters. In the center, 4 separate craters could be seen from where the 4 hemophilic apes had landed. Yet there was no movement from within the crater. Whether they were still alive or not was a complete mystery. The men from the Jetta clan felt their jaws drop at the unbelievable sight in front of them. As if a storm was being waged in their minds, they were deeply affected by the sight. Jinshin's strength was something that left them all speechless. It had only taken a single palm to defeat 4 Class 6 magical beasts to such a degree. Was this really the strength of a Heaven Saint Master? Against these 4 hemophilic apes, even a 6th cycle Heaven Saint Master would be unable to defeat them soundly without a Heaven-tier battle skill. This was the difference in natural strength between humanity and magical beast. However, Jinshin only needed a single palm strike to defeat them. What kind of power was that? Slowly taking back his hand, Jinshin stared at the 4 hemophilic apes. These 4 Class 6 magical beasts are quite strong since they survived even after receiving this palm strike of mine. They're stronger than the Heaven Saint Masters of the Heian clan at the very least. Are you really Jianchen? After a long while, one of the elders finally inquired with a stare of disbelief. He didn't dare believe that the youth that had become the king of mercenaries was so unbelievably strong. Each and every participant of the gathering of the mercenaries was under the age of 50, so a youth with that much strength was simply far too much. Isn't this the strength of a saint ruler? A woman despondently asked. There's no possible way Jianchen should have a strength like that. Who are you? Another man skeptically inquired. They had never seen Jianchen before, and were thus not sure of what he looked like. Giving a cold smile, Jianchen was about to open his mouth to say something when something out of the corner of his eyes caught his attention, causing him to look there. The space in the direction he was looking at was starting to distort to reveal a white-robed elder with long hair and a scholarly aura. This was the patriarch of the Jetta clan, and the sole remaining saint ruler. We pay our respects to the patriarch. The 10 Heaven Saint Masters immediately bowed out of respect to him. The patriarch ignored the bowing members of his clan in favor of observing Jianchen. When he recognized his face, the patriarch immediately froze in disbelief. The person that he wanted to capture at all costs had actually taken the initiative to come to him. This revelation was startling to say the least. The expression on the patriarch's face hardened as he said, Jianchen, it really is you. Correct, it is I. Today, I've come to pay a visit to your clan. Jianchen smiled as he cupped his hands in mock salute. He exuded the air of a regal prince, and if anyone else were to look at the two, they would have assumed that Jianchen was a good friend of the patriarch. Letting out a cold snort, the patriarch ignored Jianchen's actions. He swept his eyes down to the 4 deep craters, and then back to Jianchen with a solemn expression. Jianchen, did you do this? What other person is there here but me? Jianchen smiled. Impossible. The patriarch barked with narrowed eyes. Glaring at him, the patriarch said, Jianchen, it has only been a few months at most since we last met. How did you become so strong so quickly? Did you make the breakthrough from a Heaven Saint Master to a saint ruler? In his final few words, the patriarch grew more and more emotional. By the end, he was no longer as calm as before. In this world of extraordinary things, there is no such thing as an impossibility, but there is something I can tell you at the very least. I am still a Heaven Saint Master. Jianchen replied. He was indeed the same rank as before, but he had gained the fighting prowess of a saint ruler when he had attained the minor achievement of the chaotic body. He had not yet comprehended the profound mysteries of the world, and thus could not be considered a saint ruler. The patriarch let loose a sigh of relief at those words. The sudden thought from before had been causing his heart to skip a beat in fright. A youth not even 50 years old becoming a saint ruler was far too terrifying of a thought to exist in this world. A cold smile couldn't help but appear on Jianchen's face when he saw the expression of the patriarch. Don't you wish to take back the ruler armament of your clan? Since I'm here, why don't you try and get it back? Instantly, the patriarch regained his calm demeanor in order to make a quick observation to see if there were any hidden experts around. He very much doubted the fact that Jianchen would travel here alone. Such an action was akin to delivering oneself to death in a sense. But, even after a series of scans, the patriarch came up with nothing. There was nobody hidden nearby. With the sudden calm on the patriarch's face, Jianchen let loose a snicker to himself. If you're not going to make a move, allow me to make the first move. Take my palm then. Another burst of chaotic force appeared in Jianchen's palm before he flew forward to slap the patriarch. A tremendous amount of energy appeared, distorting and applying pressure to the space around them. The patriarch immediately felt his body be locked in place. Having received this prison of energy around him, the patriarch immediately felt shock register on his face. He had not thought that Jianchen would become so strong in such a short amount of time. Despite his shock, the patriarch was not slow to respond. With a loud shout, his own energy come bursting from his body, shattering the frigid space around him. The space regained its natural state as the energies clashed and equalized. The patriarch's figure flickered, and he looked as if he was blending with the world itself. With this ability to control space itself, he was able to instantaneously travel 100 meters to where Jianchen was. Jianchen let loose his slap. The burst of chaotic force that accompanied the slap continued forward with reckless abandon, before finally smashing into the side of a mountain. Boom! A fierce explosion rang through the air, as the mountain was reduced to fragments that flew off in every direction. The mountain itself had been reduced to absolutely nothing. Impossible! You've become a saint ruler. The patriarch cried out involuntarily. This blow had caused his heart to stop beating for a brief moment. The power that had been contained in Jianchen's hand was something only a saint ruler would be capable of. The 10 Heaven Saint Masters of the Jeddah clan were startled as well. Many of them started to pale. A saint ruler at such a youthful age was far too shocking. Retreat! One of the elders cried out before every single one of them scattered into every direction possible. A battle between saint rulers was not something any Heaven Saint Master could get involved with. If they drew close, they would only be caught in the crossfire. Jianchen didn't speak a word, and instead sent another chaotic force-infused palm strike toward the patriarch. Sensing the tremendous power coming at him, the patriarch did not choose to dodge. Instead, he boomed out, "Jianchen, you may have stepped into the realm of a saint ruler, but you are only at the first layer and nothing more. I'll show you just how big of a difference there is from the first heavenly layer and the fourth heavenly layer." An endless amount of energy began to seep from the patriarch's body, causing the space around him to quiver. With a brandish of his hand, he sent energy flying toward Jianchen's strike. As the attack traveled through the air, the space around it started to warp and twist in on itself. Boom! The two bundles of energy collided in midair against each other, causing yet another explosion. The sound of the explosion was ear-piercing, and even the highest point of the heavens would be able to hear the crackling sound from it. For a brief moment, everyone nearby lost their ability to hear. The remaining dregs of energy that sloughed off from the blast spiraled into the surrounding area, and a decent few kilometers of forest below had been obliterated. A translucent barrier appeared during the blast to protect the manor of the Jeddah clan. The barrier shivered for a brief moment when the turbulent energy struck it, but it managed to resist the blow with some difficulty. Chapter 626. Showdown with the Saint Ruler, 2. The tremendous clash of energy persisted for a while before finally starting to ebb away. At a glance, one could see that the previously untouched mountain ridges protecting the Jeddah clan had been reduced to a complete mess. Not a single part of the range resembled the pristineness it had exuded before. A battle between saint rulers was far more powerful and devastating than a battle between Heaven Saint Masters. Jianchen and the patriarch of the Jeddah clan floated several hundred meters away from one another. In this one battle between them, they were equally matched. Neither held an advantage over the other. The patriarch revealed a cross look on his face. Jianchen's strength was completely unexpected and far beyond his imagination. It left a sour taste in his mouth. A saint ruler of several hundred years was being forced down by the newly crossed over saint ruler, Jianchen. From the exchange they just had, Jianchen's strength wasn't unmanageable. But how did he cultivate so fast? It was only a few months at most, but his strength has increased by leaps and bounds to the point where his strength is comparable to mine. His talent is far too terrifying. If he can accomplish so much at his young age, I'd imagine that it'd only take him another 100 years to become a saint king. The patriarch quietly muttered to himself. Already, he was starting to see Jianchen in an entirely different light. Back in Mercenary City, Jianchen had only been a junior with decent skill to him. Thus, Jianchen was someone that could be disregarded like an ant. But after several months, this ant had suddenly swelled up to a tremendous size. It could pose trouble even for him, and that was something that did not sit well with him. Jianchen's growth was far too fast. It was so fast that the entire continent would be stunned by it. 100 meters away, Jianchen stared down the patriarch with a calm face. His eyes were intimidating, and his body released a tremendous aura that shot into the air with an impressive amount of energy. At the moment, he looked like some sort of war god that towered over everyone else with indomitable strength. To be even more specific, he was like some sort of undefeatable god of the sword that was ready to split the world with his powerful sword chi. Suddenly, a gray-colored energy began to float around Jianshen's body. This was an incoming surge of chaotic force, gathering wisp by wisp in his hand. Soon enough, his palm was twinkling with a gray-colored light. With such a large amount of energy gathered, the space around it started to twist and distort once more. When the patriarch sensed the amount of energy gathering in Jianshen's palm, he grew serious as well. As a saint ruler, he was able to sense that the energy in Jianshen's hand was far stronger than his own saint force. This realization was extremely troubling, and he was left no time to hesitate. With both arms moving into action, his palms moved in front of his chest to accumulate an extremely mystical power that attracted the profound mysteries of the world. As his hands moved, the space surrounding him started to flow like water. It was like some sort of mysterious power was accelerating the flow of time. At this sight, the 10 Heaven Saint Masters that were watching knew that the two combatants were charging up their attacks. Without even needing to be told, they immediately grabbed the people hiding behind the manor's barrier and fled as far as possible. They could not guarantee that the barrier would be able to hold up against both Jianshen and their patriarch's attack. Several seconds passed before Jianshen took the first move. With his palm thrusting forward, the chaotic force that had accumulated in his palm came flying out like a stream of water. Carrying a tremendous power, the chaotic force traveled toward the patriarch. Ha! At the same time, the patriarch let out a deep grunt. His palms shot out as fast as lightning, letting loose the mysterious energy he had been accumulating. This energy contained the profound mysteries of the world. It could not be seen nor felt by those who did not comprehend it. It was something that fused with the world and space itself, mysteriously and indescribably. When the two energies collided in the air, the expected explosion from the collision of these two energies, strangely, did not happen. There was no fallout from the energies washing over the surrounding area either. Instead, the space where they collided gave a mighty shudder and shake as the energies tore it apart. A single meter-long fissure appeared in the sky, but was quickly patched back up by the world. At the very center of the collision was a single black hole, but unlike any normal black hole, there was an extremely faint light from a star that could be seen inside. Jianshen's chaotic force was stuck in a deadlock with the patriarch's profound mysteries of the world, in a constant struggle to win over the other. Eventually, both powers tried to cancel each other out as their energies began to fade. Within several seconds, Jianshen's chaotic force ended up the winner of the exchange, while the profound mysteries of the world had been completely used up. The remaining chaotic force had not been slowed in the slightest. It continued to fly toward the patriarch. What is this energy? How is it so powerful? The patriarch cried out in astonishment. Pushing out with his palms again, he forced out even more saint force from his body to try and counteract the slightly weaker chaotic force. Master, you can't keep going on like this. Your usage of chaotic force is far too much. Also, the true might of it is not being displayed. It is only with the chaotic body that the chaotic force can show its true might. Ziying's voice explained in Jianshen's mind. Jianshen's heart skipped a beat after hearing this. He immediately gave up the idea of using the chaotic force as a projectile against his enemy. At a thought, the wind elements in the world gathered around him, surrounding Jianshen with an azure light. Jianshen flew straight for the patriarch. Master, the chaotic force should be distributed throughout the body to show off the might of the chaotic body. Jingsua instructed with a sing-song voice in Jianshen's mind. They were extremely knowledgeable about the chaotic force, unlike Jianshen, who had only just made contact with it. He was a complete stranger to this powerful energy, and required the two sword spirits to guide him on how to use it. Chapter 627. Showdown with the Saint Ruler 3. Jianshan didn't hesitate in his actions after listening to the sword spirits. Like an obedient schoolchild, he immediately swallowed some of the chaotic force from his dantian and spread it throughout his body. With the fusion of the two, Jianshan immediately felt the strength of his body elevate to a higher level in terms of defensive might. Once the chaotic force had spread through his body, Jianshan didn't even feel the chaotic force dissipate. It continued to maintain that same level of strength throughout his body, without being used at all. The following moments after he had used the chaotic force to strengthen himself, Jianshan felt his entire body continue to operate at an extremely boosted level. During that moment, Jianshan drew closer to the patriarch. His palm became a fist filled with chaotic force meant to punch the patriarch. As the fist traveled, the surrounding space around it violently trembled. Jianshan was an adept in close combat fighting with his own body, but Jianshan didn't worry about any threats, because the powerful chaotic force had been joined with the chaotic body. The patriarch was startled at Jianshan's choice of attack, but then a small smile appeared on his face as he said, "Jianshan, this old man has a considerably strong body. Allow me to teach you a good lesson with it." Without delay, the patriarch's right hand formed a claw shape as it filled with saint force. That hand flew toward Jianshan's neck, while his left hand moved to block Jianshan's punch. The patriarch of the Jetta clan was without a doubt a saint ruler. He was one who had peered into the abyss that was the profound mysteries of the world, and understood the secrets to space. A fist of his contained the powers of space, and was extremely fast as a result. It moved so quickly that Jianshan had no time to dodge the attack. Thus, the man to grab Jianshan by his throat. Jianshan felt startled to see the hand reach his throat. Although the chaotic force was still spread throughout his body, and boosted it to an unbelievable level, Jianshan was fighting a saint ruler either way. He wasn't even sure of how strong he was with his body as it was right now. He was unsure whether or not he could survive the saint ruler's strike to his throat. The saint ruler easily grasped onto Jianshan's weak point. This made the patriarch feel extremely joyful, and with a twinkle of killing intent in his eyes he laughed. "Jianshan, you may have stepped into the realm of saint rulers, but you've clearly not understood the mystery that is space. Allow this old man to send you to your death." With the final word, the patriarch squeezed his right hand, trying to snap Jianshan's neck. After the patriarch clenched his hand, he came to the startling realization that what he was holding was not flesh and blood. It was something many times harder than steel and stone. The look of joy on the patriarch's face slipped away with the realization. Staring at Jianshan in shock, he asked through his befuddlement, How did your throat become this tough?" By now, Jianshan's body was completely filled with chaotic force, and boasted a defensive might that was startling. Even a saint ruler wouldn't be able to leave a scratch no matter how hard he tried. One wouldn't even be able to snap Jianshan's neck. Jianshan was filled with an endless amount of joy while he calmed himself down. At the same time, Jianshan's right palm made contact with the patriarch's palm. With a sharp crack, the bones in the patriarch's right arm fractured. Letting out a deep grunt in pain, the patriarch watched as his right arm lifelessly drooped down to his side. Jianshan also grunted as the chaotic force in his right arm cycled. Jianshan punched at the patriarch's chest, but the space around his fist froze up, allowing his punch to travel even faster. After experiencing Jianshan's punch once, the patriarch was now painfully aware of how strong his fist was. Unwilling to allow himself to be used as a punching bag, the patriarch's body flickered into non-existence. By borrowing the power of space, he was able to retreat several meters away where the frozen space Jianshan had created did not affect him. Bang! The fist of Jianshan impacted against the sky, letting loose a muffled explosion while space became heavily distorted. Jianshan did not hesitate to let out a loud hiss after his punch missed. He charged straight for the patriarch, who was still several meters away, as his fighting intent rapidly increased. The patriarch's face hardened when he felt the amount of power in Jianshan swell up. Swiftly turning around, he borrowed the power of space once more to retreat several hundred meters away. Once there, he began to condense his saint force into his right hand. In a second, a sword made of fire appeared in it. The flames that flickered off the blade were so intense that they seemed to burn the very space around them. And now, this old man won't be holding back any longer. Let this old man have some good fun. The patriarch spat. After these several exchanges, he knew that this was no time to hold back. Otherwise, there would be no way to counter this upstart of a youngster. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.